Good evening, and welcome to the March 31st, 2015 Board of Education meeting. We have been in an executive session since 6 p.m. to discuss potential district litigation and an individual personnel issue relating to tenure recommendations. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll start with introductions.
Michael Cooper.
Diane Stever.
Joanne Cunningham.
Jody Monroe.
Tom Douglas.
Matt Downey.
Charmaine Widgesinger.
Christine Beck.
Lynn Lenhart.
And Judy Kehoe.
Okay. And do we have any participation in government students here this evening? Yes? Okay, a few of you. Your requirement is to stay till 9 o'clock. If the meeting is still going on at 9, we'll take a quick break. You can come up and there'll be sign-out sheets up here. And if you need any board member to sign any paper for you, we can do it at that time. If the meeting gets out earlier than that, you'll just come up at that time and sign out. Second agenda item, the approval of the minutes of the March 18, 2015 regular board meeting.
So moved.
That's the first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? That item carries. Item number 3, the Student Senate report. Do we have a representative from the Student Senate? Thanks.
Hello, my name is Chelsea Cato, and I'm the president of Student Senate. We are currently working on 2 fundraisers, one being Dodgeball and our second, Mr. Bethlehem. Dodgeball is scheduled for April 20th through April 24th, but it'll most likely be moved due to the batting cages set up in Gym A, and then there's also the APs coming up, so we have to work around the schedule of that. And Mr. Bethlehem is scheduled for May 8th in the auditorium. This year, we will be awarding 4 $500 scholarships to seniors who exhibit leadership in the high school or the community, so they can apply in Mr. Irons' room by the Wednesday following break. And the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors will pick who receives the award, so there's no bias from the seniors, and anyone's able to apply for that. We are also supporting the best buddies of our high school by attending the walk at Crossgates on April 19th at 8 o'clock in the morning, and students can sign up online, or there's a sheet that the Best Buddies is handing out, and you just support our Bethlehem team. And that's it for now. We're working on planning on what we're doing for the rest of the year.
Great. Thank you for the update. Anyone have any questions for?
I noticed that there's signs up for the junior prom. Is there ticket sales? Have they started yet? Do you happen to know?
I'm not sure. That's junior
separate?
council.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you for trying to donate tickets for the musical and getting a large group of seniors to come out. It didn't work out as we had hoped, but I thank you for your efforts.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Next is the superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you, President Donnie. I just really have one announcement, and then I'll turn it over to several other individuals who will be recognizing academic standards for our students as well as athletic standards for our students tonight. It is my pleasure, as it was just announced yesterday, that Ellie Bell and Taylor Rohan have been selected to represent Albany County at the 2015 Students Inside Albany program. Sponsored annually by the League of Women Voters of New York State Education Foundation, Inc., the Students Inside Albany program will be held May 17th to the 20th. Approximately 60 high school students from across the state come together to learn more about leadership and how state government functions. And we certainly could use their help, seeing how the past budget was just hopefully completed, I think, later today. The program is designed to increase students' awareness of their responsibilities in representative government while providing the tools and leadership skills to meet the future responsibilities. Please join me in recognizing their efforts and congratulating them on this opportunity, and we'll invite them out to the board in the future. We have a pretty hefty crowd tonight, so I think we'll get started. And I think I'm calling up Mr. Landry, the high school principal. As tonight, we're going to focus on a lot of the high school activities and successes of the student programs that we've had recently, and in the future board meetings to come, I think we're going to try to address middle school and then also the elementary school as we come out. So, Mr. Landry, is there a PowerPoint or? Oops. Is that it? There we go. And as you announce the students and discuss, what we'll do is we'll ask the students to come up, and I think the board president and vice president, where would you like to be, either over here or in the front?
Yeah, in the front.
And we can go up front.
Okay, the first award is the National Merit Scholarship finalists. We had 5 of them this year, so if I could call up Sarah Edgar, Emma Eisenbraun, Ann Furman, Miranda Miller, and Ronald Shee. This is based on their SAT scores. The next award is the Physical Education Student Leadership Award recipient. There are 2, Philip Burhopt and Chelsea Cato.
Philip couldn't be here tonight because he had another commitment already arranged, so he sent his appreciation to the board as well as to the high school administration.
This year, 3 of our musicians were selected for the New York State Band Directors Association Honor Band: Elena Kryenberg, Abigail Nyerlin, and Cooper Martell. Rosera Sanders was the Shakespeare Recitation Competition Capital Region winner. And she could not be here. There she is. Come on. On a side note, I'd like to congratulate Rosera for a phenomenal job as the student director for the recent musical. And for those of you there on Saturday, I should have paid attention to how to enunciate better. Next, we have the Bethlehem Science Bowl team. They were coached by Paul O'Reilly this year. And that would be Bowen Chen, Kaibao Shui, Wenyan Hu, Ronald Shee, and Eric Wolfsberg.
We'll try to get another picture. Unfortunately, scheduling conflict. You can probably Photoshop us in behind that.
And before I turn it over to Mr. Keys, I would like to take this opportunity, I'm going to steal some of his thunder with this next slide, but growing up in Connecticut on the doorstep of UConn and following UConn women's basketball, I have to admit there are times I'm a far bigger fan of women's basketball because it's so much more focused on the actual concept of the game and the strategy, and just watching those UConn teams has been amazing. And I got to tell you, I've been to a lot of basketball games and a lot of high school games, and I've seen a lot of athletes, and I am very, very proud to say that this was our team, and congratulations. And yes, I do owe you a Polish stir-fry dinner as agreed to. So, Mr. Keys, all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. So much thunder belongs to that slide, so you didn't really steal that much. We have so many athletes tonight to show our appreciation and recognize their accomplishments. It's been another tremendous season here as we recognize our winter athletes. So with that being said, we have our AA Section 2 champions who defeated Shenendehowa 55-46 in the Section 2 final. They then went on to the regional championship and defeated a very tough Cicero North Syracuse team to capture the regional championship before falling to the eventual three-time state champion Ossining. An outstanding season. At this time, I'd like to bring up our coaching staff led by our head coach, Matt Bixby, his assistants, Coach Blumpkin, Coach Pacini, and Coach Palmer and McCullough. If you guys could just come on up, and then we'll call your girls up. Yeah, that's fine. Jenna Giacone. Jenna was named a Suburban Council All-Star this year. Gabby Giacone, also a Suburban Council All-Star and the Player of the Year in the Suburban Council. Olivia Hughes. Leanna Kavanaugh. Maggie Kirby. Kylie McKenna. Tori Mosley. Erin O'Donnell. Elizabeth Parenti. Kaylee Rickert. Nora Sallow. Tori Trossett. Emily Wander. And Ellie Wanarusso. Congratulations, ladies.
Can we get an extra chair over here so I can stand on it?
Congratulations, ladies. Next, representing our girls indoor track and field team, we had two Section 2 champions this year. First, I'd like to introduce their coach, head varsity coach Tom Halley. So Coach Halley, come on up. Coach Halley was assisted this winter by Coach Ayers and Coach Gansel. I'd like to introduce section champion in not one but two events, the pole vault and the triple jump, Teddy DiMaria. And the next track and field athlete is not a new name here. She has really truly dominated Section 2 athletics, a two-time state champion last year. She's won now back-to-back Section 2 championships in high jump in the winter, Grace Smith. Congratulations, girls. Our next athletes represent our girls bowling team. First, I'd like to bring up head varsity coach Mike DeAngelis. These young ladies were named to the Section 2 All-Star team, which competed at states in Syracuse. I'd first like to bring up Jenna Lemke. I'd like everyone to know Jenna bowled a 300 perfect game this winter at Saratoga. And her sister, Melanie Lemke. Congratulations, girls. Congratulations, ladies. Our next athlete, we'd like to recognize first her coach, Coach Donna Fuchsia from our varsity gymnastics program. Come on up, Coach. And I'd like to call up, now back-to-back years, she has qualified for states, our beam specialist, Kaylee Vaccarino. Congratulations, Kaylee. And our final group of very special student athletes that we'd like to recognize for this winter are our boys swimming and diving teams. And out of these 6 young men all qualified for the state championships this past winter. So first I'd like to bring up their coach, Coach Bill Durgasitz. Coach Durgasitz was assisted by Coach Anthea Morris, our dive coach, this past winter. I'd like to bring up first, we're going to go out of order here. I'd like to bring up the 4 members of our 200-yard medley relay team. I want to make a notation that this record was broken this year, and it had been standing since 1975, the longest, oldest record that took to be broken by our swim team. So I'd like to call those members of that team up. Brendan Cartwright, Connor Doyle, Stephen Marks, and Alex Tabor. Congratulations. Now, while Alex is up there, I have more to say about him. Alex, now for the 2nd consecutive year, captured the Section 2 championship in the 100-yard backstroke. He also qualified for states as an individual swimmer in the 100-yard backstroke. So, outstanding job, Alex. Great season. I'd also like to... We also had 2 incredibly talented divers that led our diving program, and they had also qualified for states this year. I'd like to call up Greg Ingraham and Cole Regan. Cole broke the school record this year with his 11 dive score. Outstanding job, Cole. Congratulations again. Thank you very much, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, obviously you can see many things that we are exceptionally proud of here at Bethlehem Central as a community, as a student body, as a high school, but also as a district. Especially, it's a very important time because today we're hoping that we will have a budget that reflects some of the great things that are able to accomplish when we've been doing more with less. Our presentation tonight is hopefully geared at trying to point us in a much better direction, and if you have the ability to stick around, I would encourage you to do so, because it's really about where we go as an educational institution in the coming years. So that concludes mine. Although there are numerous events that I've been at and advocacy that we've been doing around the clock. I appreciate everybody in the district for their efforts, our BCTA, our BPA, our BCUEA, for making sure that we stand up for the vestige of public education. And I thank you for all your hard work and as we continue into the future. So I'll turn that over to the board at this point for other activities.
Thank you, Dr. Douglas. And again, on behalf of the entire board, congratulations to all the students, the Science Bowl winners, and all the athletes and everybody that was recognized tonight. You are why we're here as board members, to volunteer our service to make sure that we can provide a solid education and experience here for with your extracurricular activities. So congratulations to all the students. At this time, Board of Education report. I know myself, I had the opportunity this past Saturday to go see Oliver the play here at the high school, another excellent opportunity for the students to showcase their talents and whatnot. So I congratulate all the students that participated in that. They did a wonderful job.
Matt, can I just follow up on that?
Yep.
I want to personally thank everybody who was involved in making sure the assisted listening system was working well for the play. As I mentioned, there have been some issues over the last few years, but I can at least report at least Friday night it was working beautifully, and I know it made my wife's experience 100% better, and I'm sure everybody else who has hearing issues were able to avail themselves of it, so thank you.
Yeah, I thought it was almost like a Broadway play. I had some senior citizens, I was there on Friday night, and they were sitting by me, and they just couldn't get over how wonderful the performers were. I mean, it was spectacular for all that were involved, whether they were on the stage or behind the stage with the lighting, or the fifth graders that participated also. I just thought it was great. And I also have to mention, because, it seems so professional, and I forgot to mention at the last meeting that I had gone to the fifth grade play at Slingerland's, Everything's Coming Up Roses, and that too, even at that level, there was a lot of professionalism and a lot of talent that will make its way up to, the plays, certainly at the middle school and the high school. I think we do a wonderful job, and I just have to mention that one was kind of extra special because the play was written and directed by Lester Beator, fifth grade teacher, and he was assisted by Connie Clarkson, and I just thought the fact that he had written the play too, besides the students performing it, was just wonderful. So I think we have a lot of talent in this district.
Yes, sure.
Just in terms of the play, I know board members wear many hats, and just want to appreciate Christine, because I know that her, at least daughter, I think just one child was involved in the play, but I know that she was behind the scenes with many parents to make that happen, so I appreciate all that you do for the board and for the play. I also, and I know several other board members attended the Orchestra Festival last week. I think it was last week. Was fabulous in the gymnasium with a guest conductor, and orchestras from grade 4 all the way up to 12 performed. It was a fabulous evening, and I saw some senior citizens also who commented on it, and just wanted to remind people that the Spectrum concert is on June 4th, which is, again, another opportunity to go to the gymnasium and hear many of the musicians at their finest. So appreciate all the musicians and the faculty who work with them, and the staff who made the setup of that gym possible, and the PE teachers who gave up their space. So.
I just want to say thank you to the Key Club for helping fold about 3,000 programs. So that was a big job and an undertaking that nobody wants to do. And Rosera, you were fabulous as the student director. It's a tireless job, and you did a fabulous job. And it was nice that this was the first time in a while that the high school has seen that type of crowd for the theater program. Over 3,000 seats. Sunday we were sold out, and Friday and Saturday were very close. So it was an excellent production.
Yeah, Joanne.
I too want to jump on the Oliver Fan Club bandwagon. I'm sorry, but it was spectacular. And one of the things I noticed was the skill level of watching those same middle school actors transition to the high school. I mean, the talent was superb, and you can see the growth of these same kids at the middle school level, and then the high school. I mean, they truly were professional level, many of them. And Rosaura just, acing it with the Shakespeare competition and the student director. You obviously have a very bright theatrical future in front of you, so congrats to you.
Can I say something?
She has to go to the mic.
Yes, the microphone. Yeah. We normally don't allow that, but we will today.
But we will.
I don't know how to keep this up, so I'm just going to hold it. Also, I don't think it's working. Okay.
It comes out too if you want to hold it in your hand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for recognizing the hard work that went into the production. It's 3 months of a lot of time and effort, and it's nice to get some of that feedback back. But I just wanted to give all that to Mr. Yura. I mean, I know he doesn't ask for any recognition whatsoever, but it all goes to him. I mean, all of my accomplishments, all the rest of the high school actors' accomplishments, they're all attributed to him for his dedication to all the students. Like, he's all about the students and to producing what he knows can be produced out of them. So I just wanted to say that, and thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
And ditto on that.
The one thing I was also going to say is I second that with Mr. Yura and the Dashews. Again, just tremendous, but I will also compliment you because great leaders always attribute their success to others, so good for you. But just spectacular. I was so thrilled to see it, and just the fact that they can manage, I don't know how many fifth graders, like 50 fifth graders. And they were terrific too, and I know it was a thrill for so many of them, but just spectacular. And I also want to say, I've had a couple of parents who were new to the spring orchestra concert that we had, a couple of them, including me, the first time I'd been. And, a parent actually stopped me today in the coffee shop and said, I know you're on the board, I just want you to know that the music program in Bethlehem is just head and shoulders above others that he's been, a participant of in different capacities. And when you see, those elementary kids who are playing, and you see sort of that they get a taste of what it's going to be like when they're in high school. I mean, it really is spectacular, and I encourage everyone who's listening and those of us that are here to go to the Spectrum concert, because that really is, if we're in a deficit some year, maybe we should have it charge admission and have extra showings for the community, because it's that level of performance. They all left. But wow, what a great recognition of folks from athletics and, academics and theater, and, it's a nice day in Bethlehem when you get to do that. So good for all of them.
Can I just say one more thing? I just want to piggyback on something that Mike said. I anticipate we'll have some good discussion tonight about many things. If my fellow board members and anyone from the audience, if you could speak directly into the microphones, that is going to help me hear you, hear all the discussion, as well as anyone making a presentation. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I forgot one thing. I know the Middle School History Bowl, they're going to the national competition shortly. Tonight's the last night, I noticed, in the SNN for their fundraiser. We're all washing our cars. It's that time of year. So all you have to do is click on the link and purchase your Hoffman car wash tickets, and it helps the History Bowl folks get to DC and raise the money to do so.
I think they're giving 50% of
Yeah.
the sales directly
Yeah.
to the fundraising event.
Great. All right, next we'll start with the item 6, our presentation tonight. It's a 2015-16 budget presentation and discussion. As Dr. Douglas had said earlier, hopefully tonight there will be a budget. We did get some tentative, what they call school aid runs today. I know we have about a $3 million what they call gap elimination adjustment where the state gives us our state aid based on formulas they run, and then they take $3 million away. Well, this year they're going to only take $2 million away. So, but they're calling that a 9% increase, which it's really not a 9% increase. It's just they're not taking away as much as they have in the past years. So we're thankful for the support of our legislators in getting that money back to us, and we look forward to hopefully full restoration next year. But turn it over to Tom and Judy at this point.
Well, thank you, President Downey. Tonight is sort of our finalization of what we've been presenting to the board. So this is the 2015-16 budget overview. It's not moving forward. Okay, there we go. Tonight's agenda it's very interesting because we are going to give a state aid update to the information that we received as late as about 1 o'clock today and build into this presentation. But in addition, we're also going to review some of the potential reductions that have been identified, as well as new reductions that we are proposing tonight for the first time as we sort of zero in on our budget and our projections. In addition, we also have a few additional items that we need to add that we haven't talked about yet as we future for the district, and also look at some of the impacts of our past reductions. So that's also a topic. Finally, what happens is everything that we've presented up to this point, we will have in a prioritized potential additions list, as well as the rationale, so that people, if they are unable to come this evening, they could see it on our website as well. And then also at the end, go through our future meetings. First, the state aid update. As we look at the state aid update, and I'll turn it over to Judy in a second, is we initially got our runs this afternoon, and although those runs indicate, as President Downey said, that we're going to receive about roughly a 9% increase, once we look at what we are actually able to charge for aid and our projections from the business office, we feel with building aid and the return of the GEA and some foundation aid and our aidables, that we will see an increase in revenue of about $2.2 million. Now, that's important because that is something that we have been talking about, but I think it's still to drive home the point. It's an increase of aid that was already owed to us for the past 5 years. So I hate to say it's an increase when it's something that we should have already been receiving. So now to turn over more of the aid estimates in the calculation table, I'll turn it over to Judy, and then we'll go back and forth between you.
It is an increase from last year to this year, and in our initial baseline budget, we of course had a flat assumption for that aid, so to be able to add $2.2 million is certainly a help to the position that we were at. The main thing that I want to highlight for you is the building aid. We were really hoping that we were going to see the $990,000 that was scheduled to come to us this year based on the work that we had done for the capital project. So that is on the aid run, and that increase is a relief to see that there. And the other big element, of course, is the $1.1 million in the gap elimination adjustment. So to be able to add that into our baseline budget brings us up to about $25.5 for our state aid figure, which is welcome to have that question answered. There is an impact, of course, with the state aid as it relates to our tax cap calculations. We had quite a range that we had been showing over the last few weeks, where we could go as low as a decrease of 0.74% if all of the aid flowed to us, or if we didn't get any of it, the tax levy could have been as high as 2.02%. With the appearance of the building aid on the aid run, that increases the state aid, which therefore decreases the amount of the exemption. So when the state aid goes up, the taxes go down. So that's why you see the 0.45% is our maximum allowable tax levy limit. There's still one piece of information that I'm waiting to get confirmation on from the state, and that relates to the Excel aid. I don't believe we're going to have to show it in here. That's what would result in a reduction in the overall levy. But I'm hoping to, now that the budget is hopefully adopted by midnight, to be able to get somebody that can answer my question. So if we are able to settle on the 0.45% increase, that will yield an additional $287,000 for the budget. Okay. When we did our initial presentation in the beginning of February, we noted that there were a few items that we needed to go through and adjust estimates as we came further along in the process. And one of the things that we have quantified is taking the positions where we had people in the budget last year but who had then retired. When we're replacing those positions, there's a differential in the salary. We refer to that as breakage. So looking at that breakage amounts in the salary and then applying the associated fringe benefits to that, we have $550,000 that we can remove from the baseline budget totals. So also another help to the bottom line. We also had indicated we had a question mark as to the final amount of our BOCES expenditures. We did not have final rates when we went in to present the baseline budget, nor did we have the commitment forms where our departments were able to go through and identify exactly what services they wanted to purchase in the coming year. So between the pricing amounts that have been settled by BOCES and then refining the estimates of what we are going to be able to purchase, we can offer up a $300,000 reduction to the baseline budget. The bulk of that is in technology. When we had done the technology presentation, we had estimated that it might be as high as $150,000, but in working with Dr. DeAngelis, we were able to increase that amount even further up to $242,000. Okay. Health insurance is another good news story for us this year. In each of the presentations, we were noting that there were increases within the individual budgets because of the health in lieu payments that had been higher than we expected. With those increases in the health in lieu payments, that meant we were not paying for health insurance benefits for those employees, and that is going to cause us to come in under budget for 14-15. When we rolled out the baseline, we had assumed that there was going to be a 7% increase in our health insurance premiums. And I am absolutely delighted to tell you that we're going to be at increases below 2% in the 15-16 school year. We had a relatively low renewal under 3% for both the Blue Shield and the CDPHP plans. We have about 50-50 of our employees and retirees split between those two plans. But we also had a contractual change with our BCUEA contract where the office visit copay is rising from $20 up to $25, and that resulted in an even lower percentage increase. So when you have a almost $11 million budget line item for health insurance and you get that kind of a reduction in the rates, that also translates into a significant reduction to the baseline of $400,000. And these are...
No, I'll let you finish, but when you're
okay.
done.
So, and these are final rates. The CASHIC Board of Trustees had just approved those at the last meeting. So.
Can you give us what the average has been for the past few years?
Oh, much higher, 7%, 8%. We haven't been in double digits for quite some time, but to be below 5% is phenomenal. I can get you a chart and give you the history from prior increases.
And then, do we have a reserve for health insurance or no?
No.
No? Okay.
No, that would
I'm
not
just
be
thinking
one
that
of
we
the
wouldn't want to
permissible.
spend it all, maybe save it if we had a reserve where we could put it in for any potential future increase back up to 5, 6, 7%. So
that is not currently permitted under the
Okay.
existing legislation.
In a way, what we have as that unanticipated reserve would be the use of our fund balance, whether it's the 4%.
Right, but we're limited to 4% on that, so
Or if
it's...
we had to look at one of our reserves that we do have access to cover that expense for the year and then build it into the budget.
The only reserve that we have really through CASHIC is because of the funding mechanism that we have on the plans. It's a retrospective arrangement, and if we ever have a refund of premiums, that basically it is staying within CASHIC as a credit that's available to be applied to calls, if there are any in the future, where our experience is actually more so than what we paid in the premium. So that's a little bit of a buffer for us, which helps as well. But I'm hoping for low single-digit renewals in the future as well. Everybody needs to stay healthy, because that'll help our rates.
Can I just ask you a question? That 2%, is that the whole, that's the district share and the employee's share? It's all 2%?
That's the total premium increase.
Okay.
And that is split depending on the bargaining unit, length of service, et cetera.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty darn low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also had mentioned at the last meeting, we were waiting to get the final TRS rates for next year. They had initially told us that it would be a range between 13% and 13.5%, and we landed in the middle at 13.26. So when that's applied to the TRS members' salaries, that yields a $70,000 reduction to the baseline. Tax collection. We haven't talked about this in a while. Last year, in September and October, it was our first year of using the BOCES service, and as we had noted at some of our meetings, we had a few bumps in the road with the initial rollout of that service. BOCES has been very responsive in meeting with us and addressing those concerns, so I think it should be much smoother sailing in year 2. We are going to continue to allow residents to make payments in person at the 2 branches of Pioneer Bank, the one on Delaware Avenue and the other in Glenmont. We had close to 3,000 people elect to take advantage of going into the branches to make those payments, so very well received. And with evening hours and weekend hours, I think it added convenience for taxpayers that they didn't otherwise have. One of the areas that we'd like to make available to residents in the coming year is credit card acceptance. This is something that is available to us through BOCES. It does not cost the district anything additionally. We did have a handful of taxpayers request, do we accept credit card payments? There is a fee associated with it, and it's 3% of the amount of the bill, so I wouldn't say it's an insignificant charge. I don't know how many people will even want to take advantage of it with that structure. But again, because there's no harm, my recommendation would be that we allow that. And there is a bit of a lead time to get that set up, so if you're okay with that in concept, I'll start the paperwork rolling with BOCES to set that up for this coming fall.
Does the 3% go entirely to the credit card company, or does BOCES get a share of that? Or
I believe it goes to the credit card company. I'm not sure what BOCES' underlying arrangement is. I was mainly looking at it as a convenience option for those who had requested
it. The IRS
it.
does the same thing if you want to.
Oh, yeah. Everybody has a fee.
Everybody uses the pass-through process.
But there's no, like you said, there's no revenue generated on behalf of the district for
No.
use of that.
No, we just get our taxes paid. So. The other item that I wanted to highlight for you is when people do not pay their taxes in the 30-day period in September, and if they pay them into October, there are penalties that apply. And we've had differing penalty rates for many years, where Bethlehem taxpayers have been at 4% and New Scotland has been at 2%. And in checking with our area school districts, everybody is at 2%, and I think it makes sense to lower that penalty amount and to unify the amount for all of the taxpayers within the boundaries of the Bethlehem Central School District. So if you were to approve lowering that penalty amount to 2% in Bethlehem, that would be a revenue reduction of about $25,000 in the budget.
And we would have to bring that resolution before the board.
Mm-hmm.
A separate action would be required, but since we were talking taxes and budget, I wanted to put that out there for you to think about.
Do you know why those different penalties were assessed?
Because the school district was the receiver of taxes for the New Scotland piece, and the town was the receiver because there's an elected receiver of taxes, they had the authority to change those rates, and they had changed it to 4%. I think the idea was to help cover their costs because their fee for collecting payments on behalf of the school was to retain the penalties that were generated on those tax bills. So I think it was just trying to match their labor and fringe benefits with what they were collecting in penalties. But now that we're doing them all, it really would simplify things and I think make sense.
Makes printing the bills much easier as well, because each bill has to have a different printing because of the penalty.
And then,
Is there any incentive to keep the penalty maybe at 3% across the board, so it's an incentive to pay it on time versus, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there.
well, but no matter what, we get, if it is late and we turn it over to the county subsequent to the October end date, right?
Right,
We
they-
get that it's added on, isn't it?
They
And then
have
we get that.
additional fees at the county, so you
Right.
really don't want to
But-
go past.
No, but we assess the 4 or 2% and are guaranteed
Yeah.
that money. paid
Yeah,
up by
so
the
that
county.
would be coming to us.
It makes sense to be in line with the other school districts. You know, like being for years at 4 and 2, I don't believe people really knew there was a difference between the two. But we're one school district, I think it goes with the comments the board has made over and over. This is about the school district in totality. So you could say 3%, but seeing how all other school districts in the area are at 2%, we would probably feel more comfortable being consistent with those school districts' expectations of why in Bethlehem do you pay a 3% penalty, but every place else you pay a 2%. So that's why we felt 2 is the best place.
And in looking at the amount of delinquent taxes, when we do that settle-up report for the board every, at the end of the collection season, there really hasn't been a large variation in the amount of the unpaids from year to year. So I wouldn't think that the penalty is something that's foremost in people's minds.
We're
They're
giving
either
the
gonna-
slackers a little bit of a break.
And it would be terrible to raise New Scotland
Right.
up a percent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
so we're raising 2% in both 4.
It'd be terrible, yeah. If we went to 3, it
Well,
was
that's why I'm
great.
saying,
Yeah.
Ways, yeah.
well,
So-
three across the board. Is the
But it
average
should
for
be the
most
same, I
school
believe.
districts 2?
I
Yes,
would
2
agree
is what
with
the
you.
others, and as
Yeah,
the
2
person
is
who
what
takes the phone calls, I recommend 2.
Agreed.
And we should be consistent.
Right, and we would like our residents to stay in Bethlehem.
Right, even the slackers.
So now that we've covered some of the reductions that we haven't previously mentioned, one of the parts about this evening's program is to do a lot of cleanup from our first 4 presentations, but also some of our new concepts that really didn't necessarily fit in reviewing our current programming. So up on the board are other program updates, and if you look at the top, the ESL interpreter allows us a greater variety of student languages that we need to utilize with our families of a second language. And with the new regulations, the new mandates that are out there, we didn't have this at the point that we were putting it into the budget, that we would recommend that there'd be a $10,000 addition to the budget for this service. The second line is one of the programs we've been working on and slowly ramping up over the past 2 years about academic rigor and new programming for our students here at Bethlehem Central, and that is the International Baccalaureate program. We're in the second year of review where we're planning on coming to the board at the end of the year to announce our request to ask the board for us to continue with the IB program in the application and training stage to potential implementation in the year 17-18. But because application has to go at a certain time in training, we sort of have to build into the budget and build into the process. That at this point, we estimate that it should be no more than $100,000 of any type of application and training to get any teacher that would be an IB teacher moving forward into that future year to be addressed during the current 15-16 school year.
Tom, but we haven't, the board has not had a single discussion
No.
on this program yet, so to be putting this money up
Right.
prematurely seems, I'm not sure that's the
Well,
wisest
that's
thing.
why we're putting it
Plus-
up as
plus,
consideration.
I would want to see what we're doing for all our students. We have a lot of students that kind of slide through the system. and that may need a little bit more assistance to having them be successful, not just take care of our top students,
Yeah.
in an IB program.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think we have to have a discussion. I know there is still another review for the board to go out. We're just trying to find an appropriate date for, I think, to visit Hilton has asked us to confirm a date with them. But one of the processes that goes on is if we don't have if we do not have the money in the budget, even if the board, say, opted at the end of the year to say, let's go ahead with this, we would have to wait another year to put it into the budget. Where if the board chose not to opt out or opt into the IB program, the $100,000 would be in the general fund and could be either utilized for other areas or just be held and then corrected in the following budget cycle. So that's why we're just trying to pre-plan, which we've been very reactionary planning in the past budget cycles.
Okay.
A couple questions. First of all, we haven't heard a formal presentation about the IB program, but we have had some informal discussions. I know some folks have gone and visited other programs and observed it. So I assume that some of the monies are going to be set aside to continued evaluating other programs and developing the proposal to the board.
That
So it's
could also be the
well-informed.
case, yes.
And is the IB program just geared towards the top academically achieving students, or is it a bit more diverse? 'Cause I don't
Yeah.
think it's just a program for the top students.
Well-
But could you,
Well, we did see some students when we visited Vestal that were,
General.
really was open to anyone to take some of the courses, like some of
Okay.
the art courses, some,
Okay.
So, I mean, there is that availability, but if you go totally through the program, even in that school, there were classes that only had 3 or 4 kids in it because they really didn't want to finish up the IB program.
It's
If
an
they do a
alternative
thesis, they have to do it.
pathway for Regents diploma as well, but the one thing about the IB is it's open to all students, but the students also have to make the commitment to the program as well. Depending on our presentation and our formulation of how it would be implemented, that is still a lot of the questions up in the air. But to go through the planning process and not have it properly funded, if the planning process is moved forward, we'd be waiting. And so that's why we wanted to expose the potential dollar amount at this point, and then we can always redeploy it if we had to.
I actually like that it's in there just for a planning purpose. I mean, if you're doing a lot of college visits, which, we're in the midst of doing, the IB designation is certainly reflective of, a school that is really trying to be competitive. My daughter's looking out of state. The Regents is a New York State designation that, a lot of people understand because, New York produces a lot of good competitive students going on to college. But the IB designation is, that's a designation that is, I don't know if I didn't go on the field trip. I look forward to going on.
It is
But-
considered one of the highest designations for any grant.
But I don't know if it's an international or just national.
It is international.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the name of it, so that would make sense. But I'd like that we're planning for that, because I think it gives us more options later. And I do think we put things in the budget early on the curriculum side, that we're focused on trying to bring along and put resources at the other end, kids that need help in reading, writing at the elementary levels, beefing up those programs. I think that's very, very critical and important, and we certainly heard that from the teaching staff, that they wanted to see that. But if we're just going to have this in there to plan, I kind of like that.
And I would encourage the other board members, if they can, to go on the next visitation, because it's a very different thing from reading about the program and actually seeing it being implemented.
Do we have a date for that?
Not yet.
We're trying to isolate a date right now with
Okay.
the break coming up next week, budget approval. It's very hard because you pretty much need either a Monday, Tuesday, and then you come back for Wednesday, or a Wednesday, Thursday, or Thursday, Friday. It's trying to make sure that it's as much available to everybody to be able to head out, because it is about a 3.5-hour drive to 4-hour drive and it is an overnight.
Okay, well,
To
as
be
much
there early
time
morning.
as we
Lead
can
time,
get
yeah,
to
I would
plan.
need As much lead time as possible.
Yeah,
to
that's
do the
helpful.
next one.
And can I just say with the IB program, what I'm hearing is sort of proceed with caution. You talked about teacher training. I'm not sure what that training would entail, if it's something that can be done after the board action, if you were to bring it before the
Yeah.
board to see if the board would approve it. And it sounds like perhaps funds need to go into the further development of the proposal.
Correct.
And perhaps less toward any training that might be needed if the program were implemented, if that makes sense.
Correct.
There's a lot of training that's involved.
Right,
so
right,
we'd
right.
have to
Oh,
put
sure.
quite a bit of money.
My concern, I just don't want to see us overextend ourselves. We're just talking about implementing STEM programs. We're adding a computer science class. What I would really want to see are what are the top 3 initiatives that we're looking at as a district. We want to be competitive. I like the idea of an IB program. I know Albany High's had some difficulty with implementing it and sustaining it. So I am concerned with spending that type of revenue right now on it with such unknowns, with us looking at STEM and computer science. I just want to know where our priorities are and make sure that we're not just putting the money in and then we don't do anything with it because we could utilize it somewhere else.
Absolutely.
Since we're asking questions about particular items, can I just ask you on the ESL interpreter?
Sure.
Is that, those people, are they paid by the hour? It's an hourly rate?
Jody?
Yes, they're paid by the hour.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, going on, we have one correction from an earlier slide where earlier we put high school art that was supposed to be a .3 FTE. As we now are going through scheduling and sectioning, it has been refined that it would only need to be a .2 FTE. So we'd have a reduction here of $7,120. Also, we realized that in all of our discussions, we needed to make sure that it was recognized that a middle school PE would be an addition of a .1 FTE, so that would be an addition of 7,120. That's just from our presentation. We want to make sure we clearly note that it should have been in there earlier. In addition, as we've discussed before throughout many of our budget cycles, our special education and student services, one of the things that we did last year is we made some reductions in it, and we still have had some legal issues that we have to cover, and to make sure that the budget is appropriately budgeted for, we're requesting an allocation of additional $25,000 towards our special education designated legal fees. And then also because each year, and more so now, we have been finding that we have more and more students with special needs moving into the district, that our budget has been getting tighter and tighter over the past couple of years, and we've actually overspent some of the budget in the code that we would request at this point $150,000 if we have the ability to make sure that our special education services have the budget for the unanticipated needs that arise during the year that we cannot necessarily budget for.
Now, I have a question.
Sure.
In the information for our meeting, the budget information, not this budget, but
Right.
in terms of the financial information that were provided, it said that we're below our costs in the special ed area.
At that time, I believe, and Kathy, where are you? At that time, what it was is I believe we were below, and then in addition, I think.
But this
as
was a report
Ms.
that was for
Johnson
this
has said in
meeting.
the past week or 2 weeks, we've had a number of students, without going into identification, that have moved in that have required even more costs for the district that we have had to incur, and that is a regular transition with special education. So if you want to come around.
Sorry about that, not as tall as the rest of you. Always trying to be careful about confidentiality, but we have had a number of students move in. A few of them have already been outplaced by the previous district, and it's late in the year, so you really try to evaluate the program that they've been placed in and determine whether we have a program back here. But I look carefully at those kinds of transitions, and we've had a really large increase in kids moving in. So just trying to be planful. Other years, we've had to go back to you guys and say, we're short. If we don't need to use it, believe me, we don't want to. I look at funds constantly, but we wanted to just kind of make sure that we were okay, because, one student in special education can consume a third of that amount of money.
No, I understand that. No, I just thought it was interesting that the financial report that we will be approving as part of tonight's agenda said that we were behind, and then, then I saw this big increase.
Yeah, and like I said, Lynn, that can happen, and 2 days later, with the addition of a student, I can be completely out of money.
So I do remember past years where we even had to convene summer board meetings to increase funding to special ed that, the budget had already been passed. So we had to find money in places in order to fund students who had moved in over the course of the summer, so.
Okay. Thank you.
And the next one, as long as I'm up here, I'll just explain that. Over the last, actually many years, the Special Education Department has been funding, through our federal grant, a 1.0 technology person. And it's actually been not one single person, but 0.25 of a couple of people. And Dr. DeAngelis and I have been working on reducing some of that so the funding isn't coming out of the grant. So that next $30,000 is a partial pullback from the amount of money that the grant has been funding for a technology person.
But we still have the grant funding. It's not a loss of the grant funding, but more of
Well,
a shift of the funding.
each year for the last few years, the amount of
Probably
grant
going
money
down.
has been
Has been
reduced.
going down, okay.
So we're just constantly trying to balance what goes into that grant.
Fine, okay.
Yes, yeah, it is a 1.0, it had been, and we're going to fund 0.5 of it. Sure.
And then it brings us to the point that in our O&M, it was presented about turf management, staffing, equipment, and supplies. At that time, they did not have a potential number for that suggestion. Although Mr. Nolte said, hey, we're about a year out with it, one of the things is he did come back and indicate that the quicker we can address it, because although the fields that we're working on may not utilize it, the other fields would utilize the services of this line. The pricing would be, I believe, $152, and that would be one additional staff member for grounds, I believe. Equipment of having a high velocity and high coverage area mower, and also putting in a turf management program for making sure weeds and feeding the grass so that the turf stays healthy and has a proper, how would you say, proper care and maintenance to make sure that it doesn't wear or get infested, grub infested and so forth, that deteriorates the turf surface. So that we wanted to just get the number back because it was presented, but the number wasn't put in there at 152,000.
Is that just for the football field, or is that for all our fields?
No, that's for every single
okay.
field, yeah. It's not just for the football field, because the football field is actually going to be the district stadium, that we will use it up to roughly around our 30 to 40 contests per season, whether it's football or other contests, but it's going to be maximized by the athletic director. In addition, last year we were able to just try to bring back some semblance of field trips, and we brought it back at the amount of, I believe, $7 for elementary students, $6 for middle school students, and $4 for high school students. That by requesting additional $15,000, that would bring up the allocation roughly about $3 per student. And now the district would be funding roughly $10 per elementary, $9 for middle school, and $7 for high school in allocations for field trips or exploratory education. That nowhere near covers where the district was prior to the recession with our field trips, but between what we know with the Parent Teachers Association, this certainly helps to move in the right direction. So we put that up there.
I just have a quick comment. I'm not sure if Mr. Landry could answer this, or Ms. Monroe might have to help, but I know for my own kids, I hear a lot about field trips, or I heard a lot about field trips at elementary and the middle school level. To what extent do high school students go on field trips?
We go
quite a bit,
Oh, really?
but they're more tied to classes. Like yesterday, Nick Ferguson took both his History of New York City sections to New York City and worked with the art department, and they actually created films of their trip, which they're now going to edit. Mr. Yeri usually takes a field trip down to New York City to see a play on Broadway with his theater arts survey and comedies class. We do some of the other, well, and then our international trips are usually tied to some level of curriculum. But those are actually,
that's not funded.
That wouldn't be funded.
Yeah,
by
that's not
this.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Does anyone want to
$9 won't cover much on that trip.
And the art department often goes on field trips tied to specifically what they're doing. They go down to the King Center, which is just outside of, I think it's exit 16. So we do
Okay.
run field trips.
Great, thank you.
Do you have a list of the field trips anywhere
Yes,
compiled?
they're generated out of Lauren Crandall, the assistant principal's office.
Thank you.
So our next item is a revisit from the transportation budget where they, as we talked about the new bus purchases, the transportation telemetry that we do not have currently on our other buses, if we started purchasing them through our bus purchasing, I think it's recommended for 10 vehicles, that if we looked at retrofitting for 3 years to bring roughly about 50% of our buses into the same framework as we phase out over the next 4 years, 4 to 5 years, we would overhaul and have a bus transportation system that would be fully outfitted for safety, telemetry, and record keeping on everything that we do on our buses in real-time action. The price that they've quoted on that would be, for 3 years, would be roughly around $150,000 to make that happen. That would be a one-time expense to the budget. And then that wouldn't be necessary because it would be phased in over each of the years with any further purchases. And then last, this is basically something
Tom,
we...
can I just get?
Yes.
Then what would that $150,000 do for us?
What that does is, if we're purchasing 10 buses right now and we have a fleet of about 80, really, 1/8 of our buses would be covered. And if you're putting it out, it would take us virtually 10 years to get caught up to recycle all of our buses. If we're looking at that telemetry and looking at the safety needs that we really wish to ensure, this helps with some of our liability issues, some of our reporting issues when we're not exactly clear on everything that may happen in a bus accident, or any type of situation where we have an issue with a bus location, lost buses, or an accident where a bus may not be located because it's been in an accident and something horrible has happened. You don't like talking about that, but the telemetry allows the transportation center to make sure that they can connect with those buses that are online. With the 3-year retrofitting, I think that would end up connecting not only the 10 buses that we would purchase, but it would also, I think it's 8 and 8 and 6. That would take the 3 years' most recent purchases, or 22 buses, and now roughly 32 buses out of our 80 buses would have telemetry at the start of next year. The following year, say if we went along that 10 bus, we'd go to 48, then 58, and roughly within 3 years from next year, we'd virtually have our entire fleet on telemetry. And it also helps with the telemetry because it also assists in routing, that you can try to maximize your routes because you're actually seeing real-time and documented route paths of the bus.
And it would tie into our current software?
And it would tie into our current software.
Has there been a lot of issues with that, not being able to get hold of a bus?
There have been at times radio issues and so forth, but what happens is sometimes you can't get a hold of a bus, but you want to know where the bus is in the route. Basically now, if the bus had telemetry, they could actually go on their computer and say, this bus is here, it's 2 minutes away from your house. Or if a bus is all of a sudden at Dunkin' Donuts, which we don't have that problem, but if it was, they would end up knowing about it. Or if it was reported, the telemetry would keep the path of the bus on its routes.
So it sounds like the telemetry has a GPS function, obviously, but
There's
it
a
also
GPS function,
records mileage and stuff like that.
mileage, speed.
So is there an efficiency sort of that we would envision happening because the data collection is being done by devices rather than people?
What happens is both Cindy as well as John can use the data that they have within the system to maximize or look at efficiencies for the routes, efficiencies on idling time, and so
Right,
forth.
but there's not sort of a reporting efficiency built in. In other words, people are doing this analysis versus
They would have to
machines.
do the analysis, but the data is what allows them to do the
Right,
analysis.
right, okay.
So there's no cost benefit to it? I mean, it helps us with location
No,
or
there's
routing.
potential cost benefit, because if you look at your mileage alone and say that the route is going back and forth over a road, and the telemetry indicates that, what happens is Cindy could actually go in and look at it and say, okay, how do I change this mileage? Well, if all of a sudden the data was saying you're going 2.8 miles on your route, but now when you fix it, because the telemetry shows what's happening to the bus in real time, and you now take that route, instead of going back and forth over the same routes or looping through a neighborhood where you're weaving in and out some of our streets, like between Kenwood, I'm just using Kenwood and Delaware. Now, if all of a sudden that efficiency tells you instead of going 2.8 miles over that route, you're going 1.5 miles over that route, well, you saved 1.3 miles. Now, if that route is every day, you start getting efficiencies on each of your routes once you can monitor and track them.
When, I'm assuming we had somebody come in and show a product demo on this. Did they give you an average cost savings by using this product?
Not at this point, because when you get the telemetry, you have to build it into, like we use Versatrans. And Versatrans would be part of the system that they would have to adapt to and also learn the product over time too.
But the computerized transportation program that we use gives us the best routes, so I guess I'm just having a difficult time seeing the cost advantage of the telemetry other than knowing where the bus is.
The Versatrans gives us the routes and its best estimate on time, because the program actually runs a timing pattern of what it sets for itself from like point A to point B to point C. Telemetry will tell you the actual time. That's one of the major advantages, because now you're not just going by what the computer sets is, if there's a 30-second stoplight and you're always at a 30-second stoplight, but with the telemetry, you're never, with the way the route goes, the route is never at that stoplight for more than 10 seconds. The computer program won't ever tell you that, only the telemetry could.
Thank you.
And the last piece is the human resource position. This is something that's absolutely on the bottom of our priority list, but as a AA school with roughly 4,600 to 5,000 students at any time and a staff that matches, we run very lean on our operations, especially in the business office with HR issues. We have roughly one clerical that is doing a vast majority of the HR, and in a district this size, it would not normally be that way. There are numerous times where other individuals, whether it's Jody, Judy, Kathy, myself, would get called in, and we don't mind doing it, but what happens is it takes away from the duties that we're doing for HR needs, whether it's, watching who's putting in what leave forms, tracking leave forms, tracking employment, making sure the right appointments are for the board agenda, and that we're looking at seniority and appointment schedules. That's something that is very cost beneficial to the district if there's ever an error. And at this point, what happens is most districts our size would have an HR department that would probably be staffed with an HR officer and either 1, 2, or 3 other employees that would help take care of that task. We're not asking for that at this point, but we need to sort of move in a better direction as a district when it comes to our HR personnel and our interrelationships with each of our bargaining units and the personnel that we serve when they have a question as timely and efficiently as possible. We allotted through civil service At this point, roughly $100,000 because of that would be inclusive of benefits. But it's certainly, you know, really something that is more of a need, but is still a wish if we have to, we continue doing our job the way that we do it.
Tom, for the 27 years I've been on this board, we have always considered the need for this type of position. However, there is probably nothing that angers the community or brings
I know.
out the negative votes than adding an administrator to the team.
Nope.
And I think this is problematic. I know it puts extra burdens. People like Jody and Judy have done this, and their predecessors have done the function of the human resource person. And I certainly appreciate over time all of the people in your
And that is
people
why
before
we
you who have
placed it
done
very
that.
low.
But I really have reservations about this.
No, we certainly understand. Diane?
Well, I would think, you know, again, I remember talking about this years ago too for a human resources position, and I'm kind of surprised it's on the bottom. You know,
I
I'd
think it
like
would
to
be on the
kind of
top.
see that, to me, it's probably more important.
And I will tell
than
you.
GPS in your buses.
Yeah,
Yes.
Ms. Stevers, you know, because I'm putting that up there, I would ask for everything before that, because on behalf of my administrative team and myself, we'll do what we need to do for the students and community of Bethlehem. We don't want that to have more importance than our education, our athletics, our extracurricular. But I'm going to tell you, as we get through this budget, I'm hoping your minds will change, because the financials that we know are now in our budget to move forward, we're trying to build a budget to put the district in the best light, to move forward and address the issues that we have had, even though we wish we could address all of them. But we're just trying to give you the priority at this point and expose the issue. If I may, real quick, Ms. Cunningham, Ms. Lenhart, you're absolutely right. I mean, what happens, it's hard when you're looking at an administrator. This would not be classified as an administrator because it will not be a school administrator most likely holding the position. This will be a civil service position, and that would not fall under the administrative line. It's a technicality, I admit, but it does not enter into the administrative calculation. And on top of it, Bethlehem, for years, every year that I've been here, has been the lowest administrative to staff and student ratio in the entire capital region. And that's something to be said for a lot of hard work by many hard people. But sometimes, you know, we have to look at how do we address and do what we need to do to run the program no differently than we were talking about earlier with athletics, with education, with our staffing and our program. So that was the concept for everything that we've put up, is we're trying to say, what do we need to do it right? Whether we can do it or not, that comes down to the financial picture and the will of the board. We understand that. But we'd be wrong not to mention it. So I just want the board to know that's why I even went to my administration that they helped develop the priority order. I required that be absolutely last.
Can I ask a question? Would this position report to Judy? Is that how?
We would have to look at that, because the HR would probably report to the superintendent, but I'd probably put it that we would, because the person would be dealing with instructional and non-instructional
Right.
staff.
So it's a little
and
bit of-
administrative staff. So I think it reports to all three of us or the administrative
Okay.
team.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out, from a workload standpoint, is this going to eliminate some workload off of Judy and Jody? Or, I mean...
The answer is yes.
So, but by answering yes, you're telling me that those two, which are higher level positions, are doing work that is sort of not beneath them, but, you know,
It's not,
at a
normally they
level-
would not be doing that.
at a
yes.
level that someone of their leadership level should not be performing, which, you know, is a problem in my mind. You don't want to have your leaders of your, you know, of your organization functioning at a lower level because they don't have the appropriate staff. There's a cost to that, too. And, you know, the cost is you're not tapping into the expertise when they're functioning, doing a function that is appropriate for someone with a lower level position. So I'm sort of with Diane, I'm kind of wondering if there was this need there, and we've been filling the gap, what, there's a cost to
I think it's like
that.
everything. If something needs to get done, I have no doubt if something needs to get done in the classroom, our teachers will do it. If something
Right.
needs to get done in the building, our administrators or our support staff will fill that hole. No differently than if something needs to be done at the district level, our administrative team here would do it. No differently that if we had somebody in need and the Board of Education had to help out, I believe you'd step in, no matter what the costs are. That's what the family
No,
and the
no, and I
community of Bethlehem is
understand.
about.
You're getting the stuff done that needs to get done. I mean, listen, if you don't have anyone answering your phone, you're answering your phone yourself. Now, the question is, should you be doing other things instead of answering your phone? Everyone can answer their own phone, but maybe it's making you much more inefficient in doing what your primary position is. So I think it's a reasonable question to ask, whether there's an efficiency to be gained by providing some resources at that level.
The 100,000 covers salary and benefits, of course.
That's what we're assuming, yes.
Okay. And will that person also be assisting other unit heads, for example, O&M and transportation? And are they handling employee issues or personnel issues
A lot of
across the
times,
district?
yes, that would be the intent. That, here's how it would play out, that if there's an issue, whether it's at O&M or food service or a teacher, they'd first stop with the HR to try to see if we can help them. If by chance it rises if it's on instructional, it rises that that person needs some assistance, now they would maybe go to Jody or myself. If it was on the support staff side, now they would go to Judy or myself or Kathy, depending on special ed. But what happens is they take care of the vast majority of items that are just more managerial that need to be taken care of on a daily basis.
Would they be negotiating also? Negotiating contracts?
That would be left up. I still believe financial is one of the more important parts of negotiation, depending whether it's with BCTA, BCUEA, or BPA. I think we have to look at what's the appropriate team.
And isn't there software that a lot of information for the staff is actually online?
We would hope, yes. It's in Finance Manager. However, like if you ask us to pull up a seniority list, I know one of the biggest frustrations, we have to go through it every single, thankfully, hopefully not this year, but we have to go through it every single year for accuracy. That's something that an HR person should know at any moment and have it set at every single time that they're questioned. One of the reasons I think it happens that way for here is because everybody's trying to do their other job, and then it's not that priority until it becomes the priority. And it's just not the best avenue to be in, because we do owe it to our employees to be able to give them the most accurate information as quickly as possible.
And just to agree with Diane and Joanne on it, I've been thinking that we've needed a human resource position since I've been on the board. I think it's important with a school district this size that there's a resource that's trained with a human resource background that knows all the policies, and if there's a grievance they can go to. And I see how much time it takes for personnel issues. It can take all day, several days. The amount of time that we lose, I think, with the administrators dealing with these personnel issues far outweighs the money that's being proposed here, and I agree that it should be at the top of the list.
I would say, I'll add to that. I mean, what are we, 400 and some employees? 300, almost 400 employees, right? All right, so.
No, we're up, I think it's around 800.
Okay, so 800 employees.
800 plus. We were at 1,000 when I came in.
Right, yeah. 800 staff company wouldn't have, would definitely have an HR office with probably about 7 people.
Plus, if you can add
Just
to
handling
that.
personnel issues, health care issues, appropriate.
President Downey, if you can add to that another 400 or plus retirees that would all tend to go through HR first. A lot of their questions are, and they're needy questions because of the fact they have no connection as much with the district. So when they call, it's very important and urgent to them. And we do try to respond as quickly as possible and drop everything. And that does have its toll overall.
So
I
that
mean-
person would handle anything regarding whether it was
They
a
would be the
teacher or
initial, they would be
custodian?
the initial contact. However, if it's something that rises above the civil service position, that's why they would have to be able to reach out to the Office of Curriculum or the business office or myself, so that they have a release valve, so to speak, too.
You had mentioned negotiations, and my sense is at the level, I mean, clearly you could develop the job description and bring it to,
Right.
that's your prerogative. But my sense is at the level of that position, they would probably, the person would probably be preparing the people with facts and figures and et cetera, to go into negotiations. I wouldn't, again, it's your prerogative, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily see a person at this level engaging in negotiations. But again, it's up.
They would definitely be a managerial confidential
that's right.
position. So those are everything that we have had either from our very first presentation from February up until now. This, just so that you know, everything up here is now into our priority list that we will be getting to shortly, that you have them in front of you. This will be made available up on the website tomorrow. So we will go through those priority lists rather quickly because really, right now, we need to let you know what the budget development looks like now that everything has been rolled out and the only thing left for us is any fine-tuning of any budget. Just so that you know, with this, and as Judy's about to explain, with our recent state aid, with every reduction that we've identified, with every addition we've identified, and a potential 0.45 tax levy, the lowest I've ever presented, I believe probably one of the lowest the district has ever presented, unless you went to zero, we would be able to essentially do every item that we've discussed and budgeted for and proposed, and only have a gap of $375,000 that we would have to close. I'm going to let Judy run through that. And what I would say is, I don't know if you want to have much discussion, but we will need to have a meeting on April 15th. And the reason being is we want to fine tune these numbers just to make sure that we're dead on because of the fact that we started this, I think we started at 7 o'clock this morning. We finally got our aid runs at 1 o'clock. And then it took us 4 hours to get this in final format tonight, that we even spent 2 hours double checking our numbers to get it right, that we just want to show you where we're at. But I think if the board was willing to accept that, or after their discussion, we can probably close that $375,000 gap and still meet almost every single need that's been identified and put the district in the best financial shape since I've been here. Because if you remember, when I came, we had almost an $8 million budget deficit. You were using $2 million plus in fund balance. This budget that we're about to propose relies on no fund balance. From last year, 1.4 million, we should be able to do it with none. If we had to and didn't want to make any reductions whatsoever, I could use $375,000 in fund balance, and we're still almost $700,000 ahead of our financial plan that we put into place over 3 years ago. I don't know what else we can do except we could move in a better, brighter direction at this point and know we're in the right direction and then deal with what comes in the following year, of which the legislature says gap elimination in law should be eliminated next year, which is an additional $1.9 million of permanent funding to the district. So we're not looking short-term, we're also trying to look long-term. So, but I'm just giving you the PR and the soapbox. I want to turn it over to Judy to show you the visual representation. Yes.
Just to clarify, I have one question on the O&M turf management. How
Sure.
many, out of the 152,000, what number staff are you looking to
One
add?
member of staff would be about $65,000 with benefits. That's a full-time 12-month staff member. $15,000 for supplies or spraying items that we would need for turf management, and about $72,000 for the mower that would aid. And here's the thing, it's hard to say, you're going to buy a lawnmower for $72,000? This is a 12-foot wide mower that is an articulated mower that basically will do 10 acres of land in about an hour. where right now we use about a 4.5 to 5 foot mower that takes us almost a whole day just to do the back area. And that has a great efficiency over the time, because we could virtually, if we could have one mower at every single building and just have the daytime custodian go out, we could virtually mow our entire property in probably less than 2 hours in one day. That's not what we're proposing, but that's the efficiency that we gain, where it takes us sometimes a week to get our fields in that condition.
Now, are we short in O&M that we would need to add additional staff because of the mower's going to
Yes.
be more efficient?
Yeah,
Okay.
O&M has been cut routinely over the past years. That has, I mean, even in custodian, in our budget, I think we're adding a custodian and one additional person to O&M. This would be another person on top of that, and we're still going to be behind the 8 ball, I believe, at O&M.
As I recall from their presentation, this staff member is particularly is because of the bond work we're doing now, so much of it is outdoors, and we want to maintain and take care of all the fields and all the
The
work we're having
investment
to-
that the board and the community is making now, yes.
Okay,
Well,
I just have a
Would
quick.
would we need someplace to store this mower though, too? Or is
There
the
is
current
part of
facilities
that
will
in the
handle that?
bond for, there's a major storage shed that's going to be built as part of the bond down at O&M, so yes.
What's-
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we don't buy something that we then.
Just so that you know, it folds up.
Oh, yeah, well,
Yes.
vandalized,
What's
that's my
fund,
concern.
what's in our fund balance at this point? And-
We
'cause I know
believe
can't
we
go
would be
over it.
fully funded in our fund balance at 4% at the end of this year.
So that's the most you can have in the fund balance?
Yes. And we would probably be
then-
placing some funds, if we have surplus, into our ERS or even into a capital reserve if it would be approved by the voters.
So we can do that?
Yes.
Yes.
In other words, I seriously am trying to say, it's hard, I mean, I've been going since February, and I appreciate the support my administrative team has been, because, to me, because I've been saying this can't be, and we've been running these numbers over and over, and, you know, my name is Thomas, and I've even told them I've been being a doubting Thomas on this, even though everything points to everything that we were doing is exactly the plan that's playing out right now. And I'm happy for our elected leaders to get us to this point. They still need a lot more work to do, especially on the reform issues that they are tying to this. But in addition, that they maintain the commitment to get rid of the GEA next year, I think we're poised to put Bethlehem in a very strong position educationally and our total program for many years to come with our financial plan. So I'll turn it over to Judy so she can run through the numbers.
And just one quick follow-up for Diane. When the budget gets adopted at the next meeting, we have to file a property tax report card, and one of the data elements on that is to show what the components of fund balance will be. So that lovely slide that has all the details on those components will be part of the next presentation. So you can have the update. We'll have the projection through the end of the year included on that as well. So that's what I'll be working on tomorrow, since I'm done with budget for today.
Can I ask you a quick question before you get started, though? If there were surplus in our budget this year from the additional money that we're receiving, could we put it in the new fund on the capital improvements? Since that would be additional from the fund
Yes.
balance? It would-
And that's,
If the voters pass it.
If the voters pass.
that's the funding mechanism for those. So any of the reserves, if we have a surplus, for the capital reserve, you're going to be subject to the limitations that are part of the establishment of that reserve. So you can't exceed the maximums, and it has to be within the authorized timeline. The other reserves have to be supported by the underlying liabilities, so whether it's your compensated absences reserves or workers' comp, you have to have claims outstanding. So you can't be putting, $2 million into a reserve that you only have a liability of $500,000. So that's also part of the review that I'll be doing as part of making those projections. And then we'll see where we land as we get a little closer to the end of the year. That'll be more accurate. And then I would make that recommendation as part of one of the year-end presentations, and then we would make the transfers with your approval.
Or can some of the funds be, I know a couple years back, we used some of those funds to buy extra paper supplies for the next year and stuff.
Oh, we bought it.
Could you, right, could you use that like for like musical instruments, uniforms, or things like that, that?
If there's an identified need and we have money remaining in a budget line and we have the proper approvals, it still has to comply with purchasing laws and regulations, yes.
In other words, before we get to the end, we're going to try to strengthen our position in all of our areas if possible. We just don't know until we get closer to the end of the year.
So when we start the budget process in February, I like to remind everybody that even though we're starting out with the gap, our mission for the end of the process is, of course, to make sure that our funding sources or our revenues match our projected expenditures. So the very top line on this particular chart, and again, broken out between expenditures, revenue, and what is the gap, following the presentation of the instructional program at the last meeting, that bumps up the gap to the $3.4 million. Adding the tentative state aid increase, and again, I call it tentative because there's still some uncertainty swirling out there, and until they actually adopt the budget and we find out, are we going to get it for sure, or are there going to be some potential withholdings or any strings attached to that? I want to really see and analyze the aid reports tomorrow as well, but looking at about $2.2 million there. The tax penalty lowering to 2% for the Bethlehem residents would lower the revenues by $25,000, and that would put us down to about $93.875 million in revenues. On the expenditure side, you can see all of the reductions that I had reviewed earlier, from breakage, health insurance, pension. The other program updates is what Dr. Douglas had just reviewed of the $732,000. That puts us to a gap of only $430,000. So again, quite a far cry from where we started at the beginning of the process. Of course, I had to reduce it by rounding because the budget must be in even thousands. And using then the potential maximum allowable tax levy of 0.45, adding $287,000 in order to balance the budget at that level of $94.5 million, we would only need to use $375,000. So again, there are decisions that ultimately will need to be made. Are you comfortable going with the Mattel? Based on the information that I get from the state, is in fact the tax levy a negative 0.74? If that comes to pass, that's going to change the amount of our fund balance usage. We might have to adjust some of the other expenditures. So those are the types of details that I'll be able to iron out between now and April 15th. But with what we know today, and what we've just reviewed, that puts us to about a 2.06% budget-to-budget increase in expenditures.
And if you look at that over my 4 budgets that we've done, each of my budgets have added up over the past 4 years to roughly about I think on average we said was like 1.3% a year budget-to-budget growth. If you add that in the 2% for this year, if this is what was approved, we'd be looking at over the 4 years now, instead of being a 1.3 budget-to-budget growth, we'd be looking at roughly about a budget growth over 4 years of a 1.4, 1.45% budget-to-budget growth. The average for the district was well over, for the past 10 years, well over 5% budget-to-budget year. So, it's something to be said about the board, it's something to be said about the administration and the community, that you have been doing more with less. But you are also doing a good job with what you have, and this is the first time that we're proposing to do more with more, but it's really not more. It's what the district should have had all along, and we've been saying that each budget year just because of the GEA. So this is sort of hopefully turning some of our funding back to normal. But we're not there yet, of course. Any other questions on this? As we look, one of the things that we've done throughout the program is we've also talked about summary of impacts from past reductions. But we just wanted to remind you that over the past 5 years, enrollment has dropped and it's starting to stabilize, as we reported. But enrollment dropped around 7.3%. However, our staffing dropped over 18.4%, mostly because of the financial conditions. We would be adding, I believe, around 15 staff members under this budget. So we would be decreasing that 18.2%, but it's nowhere near still a proportional amount to the number of enrollments of students to staff. So this just demonstrates a little more visual on what actually happened. As we put this together, we would be showing the bottom line, which is the staffing line, starting to come up a little. But remember, even in this budget, and this I think gets lost in the budget, during my time, like we said, we had an $8 million budget deficit. We have cut in the 4 budgets that I have, the 3 before this, roughly around $5.5 million. Even this year, and this is what gets lost, we're proposing another cut to the budget of about 1.3. And although we're adding about $2.3 million to the budget, we're just really bringing it back into line with where we probably should have been in the first place. So that's something to think about when you look at the total reductions. Because people may say that you're adding, but actually we're adding and cutting at the same time. And then some of the impacts from the past reductions is class sizes were climbing. They were notably high when I first started. We had some electives, although we didn't really necessarily eliminate programs, our elective offerings got few and far between, as well as class sections also had some challenges in them. We also had larger remedial groups in reading and math throughout our school district. We also were increasing the walking distance, which will hopefully help because it helps us meet our tax freeze obligation that is in law as well. So those are some of the past reductions that have been out there, and there's many more that we've identified over the past 3 years. Now, the recommendation of reductions from earlier presentations. Obviously, you already heard us, we've already put this out there, that the elimination of freshman football from our athletic director, Len Keys, and that was a recommendation from the varsity head coach, and it will overall strengthen the football program because of numbers and also safety implications. In addition...
Tom, on that one, I know that you said the coach is in support of it, along with the boosters for football, everybody?
Yep.
I just
We
don't wanna
have not heard a negative
where we all of a
comment.
sudden have 400 football players show up.
We
and
have
say-
not heard a negative comment since we revealed this. Our football boosters were regularly well-known and discussed this beforehand. I do believe the AD is also having interesting visionary discussions with the Suburban Council about the direction of some of our other programs, not just Bethlehem's, but the area, which is something we've longed for the AD to be able to participate in with his fellow colleagues. So that's something for the future. In addition, I know Ms. Monroe put this up there. We have a middle school ELA Science and Social Studies 0.6 reduction at the middle school and a high school world language. This is mostly because of offerings, not because of financial concerns. And then district-wide priorities on requested additions. What happened is that we can't really put them all on one slide. So we put them in exact order of the priority level. But as you see, you can see elementary staffing, grade level teachers 3.0 is our #1 priority. It reduces class size, specifically at the primary levels is our suggestion from our elementary principals. That would be a $213,000 cost. And then it just goes down through that. So I won't spend time reading each one of these, but it will be on the website. Board members, you have it in front of you with your presentation. So I'll go through the next page. And as you can see, a vast majority of our upper level priorities, which I want to thank the administrators for helping us do the overall priority levels for each of these, are really focused on our #1 mission of education. And then as we go down, we start to intermix with all the other very important aspects of our education program for the whole child. As you go down, traffic safety, we talked about that. That's provide additional safety training for our buses. If you look at a lot of the things for middle school, it's to meet student enrollment needs of what they're going to require for next year. For the high school, it's a lot to meet the students' scheduling requests. And that's looking from the scheduling requests that we have at hand, and then to the final schedule that will run probably, I think, in May.
But isn't there a big difference between the requests and actually what results in the final schedule for
Yes.
students in September?
Yeah.
Because of singletons or trying to fit courses into the schedule?
Correct.
So
That
we're
is one
adding
thing.
anyhow, even,
Yeah, it's one of
Even
the
though-
things is, and I'll let Jody chime in, that's one of the things that I think our curriculum office and our building principals try to do and anticipate so that we meet the requirements of what classes should be running and at what levels. But this is really numbers based on requests, especially like the technology STEM. We have regularly cut students out of courses because we just did not have the staffing. This, I believe, allows us to start offering the courses that would normally, even though we had a variety of classes that could run with high numbers, we were unable to run because we did not have the staffing to fulfill all of them. So Jody?
The recommendations that I presented at the last meeting and these that have been adjusted slightly are based on, at the middle school, obviously, it's just based on enrollment because there's not a lot of selection there. At the high school, they're based on student requests, but in going through the student requests with the high school administration, we look at those that are questionable if they're actually going to run. And so these requests, point 2, point 1, are based on what we pretty much know at this point will run if we have the staffing for. So, which is why, for example, the reduction in art was a 0.3 initially. When we started running the numbers, we realized we didn't need 0.3 in order to run all the sections based on what we use as our cutoff, which is around 17 for most classes. So we reduced it to 0.2. So these numbers and the one are based on what we expect we can run with the current request. There's a few classes that we always move kids into who don't get their primary request as well, so we know those numbers tend to go up. The nice thing with Aspen is it allows us, that our past system didn't, to actually run multiple versions of the schedule and see how it plays out to try and maximize the student request to meet what they would like to take. So at this point, this is what we're anticipating. Obviously, if we didn't need, if you approve, for example, the 0.9 in STEM and based on student requests, we didn't have that number of students to enroll it. Instead of hiring a 0.9, we would hire a 0.7 instead. So there'd be, a little flexibility in the budget for that.
were there a lot of additional electives put back in the schedule from previous years, from when we had to cut some of them?
Most of the changes, obviously the computer science is a new one at the high school, and we did have a good number of requests for that, more than I think more than what we'll be able to get in. We also have a lot more students who are going to get into some of the technology classes that they have not been able to get into or we haven't been able to run because of staffing. And the other changes primarily are, there's a couple social studies courses, I think sociology we've not run in a number of years that we're able to run. And the high school art, we're actually changing, so we've got a studio art, and then there's a studio art with a media design focus, which is a change at the state level, but something that we're anticipating here. So that's an additional option that students will have in lieu of just the traditional studio art. So there are some more offerings that we've not, if we're able to have the staffing, obviously, that we've not been able to run the last few years.
Okay, so students have had the opportunity to request these, and the requests have been...
Yeah, exactly.
With regards to the reductions for middle school ELA, science, or social studies, 0.6, have we looked at the teachers that are going back and forth between the middle school and the high school, and can any of them fill those spots so they don't have to go back and forth between the high school and the middle school?
We always, every year, look at traveling teachers and what's the best option. Some of it is also, we try and honor what teachers' preference is if we can and if it makes sense for what they're teaching. So we do try and minimize travel. I think you saw in the information, we don't actually have, for a district our size, at the second, we don't have a lot of traveling teachers. But, for example, if we have a 0.2 language class, which we have currently at the high school, the only way to, you've got two options to eliminate that traveling teacher. You either don't run the class, and then you ultimately increase class sizes in the other sections.
Right.
Or you hire a .8 teacher, which is not needed based on numbers. So that's really the only way to address some of those specifics that.
But a teacher who is traveling, let's say for social studies, and part of that .6 is a sixth grade social studies class, technically that teacher could teach that class and remain in the building.
No.
It would just be a different prep, or
No, it's a
7th and
different.
8th? Is it just 7th and 8th?
It's just 7th and 8th, because sixth grade is elementary, so they can't pick that up.
Okay. Or an English teacher teaching ELA versus going back and forth between the high
Yeah,
school.
if it's got to be within their same tenure area.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. On page 34, which is the first one of the proposed budget additions, on the elementary staffing grade level teachers, I know the goal, we've heard from the elementary school principals and also over the course of the budget presentation, that the goal is to reduce class size in the lower grades. I can't speak for the whole board, but I'm not sure if the board would ask you to go back and look at the numbers in some of the higher grades in elementary schools and to see if additional staffing may be needed to balance some of those class sizes across the buildings. I would appreciate that if they could go back and do that and come back to see if this is the true number that you actually need in order to get to have the goals met. And then on page 34, the RTI staffing as well as the it's the coach, the ELA coach, to reflect on those to see if you need that much staffing to get that much support. It would be the other thing I would ask for the final budget. Do you need 4.6 folks doing RTI? We did hear the presentation on why it's needed.
I could actually answer
Okay, yes.
that now if you like. That number is actually based on the number of students we currently serve in reading or math support, and the number of students who technically in the younger grades who qualify but we're not actually able to provide support currently.
Okay.
And I mentioned last week trying to provide those grade level blocks of time at every building, so we're not actually adding more staffing and scheduling it so students are pulled out more. So that 4.6 is actually an accurate number based on the number of students we should be serving. The one thing I would say is if you wanted to look to reduce that, the only way to do that is that we would only look to provide that type of RTI at certain grade levels.
Got it.
Are we able to get the numbers of students that need the services and then the number of FTEs?
With that number of FTE plus our current staffing, right now we could service all of the students. And I worked with Kathy Johnson to look at how the special ed staffing can support some of that as well. So based on our current numbers that we've had for last year and this year, and looking at that staffing combined with this additional, we could provide support even down to the K and 1 levels, which we've not been able to do.
But can we get the actual number of students?
Oh, yeah, I could
Yeah.
get that for you.
And then I guess the other question, with the staffing at the elementary level, you were able to do it by section, and I would like to see if we could get that for the middle school as well. By
Until the
section.
schedule is run, we won't have the actual
For
schedules
this year,
for
for
next
this year, just to use it as a basis.
What are you referring to? The elementary, the
No,
2013?
where you have like Eagle, you have each class and how many kids are in each section.
Yep.
I'm looking for that same type of report for the middle school, for like the 6th, 7th, and 8th for the core classes, like social studies, English,
I
science.
sent that today.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I sent it out today.
Yeah, I think it came at towards the end of the
Like
day.
Yeah, I
because
must have
we're-
missed it.
We were
Yeah.
pretty much sequestered on budget until we could
Okay,
answer that
I'll take a look
question.
at it, thank you.
And I found that page number for my last question, it's page 40, right, almost in the middle of the literacy coach. Again, between now and the next meeting, could you just, or maybe you can respond, if you actually need a full-time person doing that.
This year, we've had someone in that position doing it .4.
Yes, sir.
I think the challenge of trying to have a part-time person to really get to 5 buildings is unreasonable. So I would suggest that it either is full-time or we don't have it at all.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation.
And I do believe one of the things that we talked about on the priority level of that is that the reason why that's down on the priority level is because we're putting such an emphasis on RTI that we would probably go in that area first versus this position.
Great, thank you.
Can we just go back to
Yep.
the page 35 on the transportation safety meeting?
Sure.
How many meetings is that a year?
No, there is mandated 2 meetings per year by New York State Education Department. This would be an additional 3 meetings
Okay.
for the drivers so that we could, I mean, if you're looking at 5 meetings, you could roughly space them out every
month.
2 months over the 10-month cycle.
Okay.
And I believe before previous budget cuts, we had
2 years ago, we cut that out.
more like that. We're bringing it back up to where it had been before we had to cut them out, I believe.
Jody, just, Lynn showed me, I think the sections, if this is the same one, has it just averages, is that?
No, those are actual numbers. What I sent out today, that's the average. What I sent out about 4 o'clock today has
Okay.
every section with an individual count.
Okay. And can I ask one question on the computer science program? Did we get a lot of interest in that? Was that, did we?
Yes. I believe we had over 40 students request it. Yeah.
Requests, and we've only done one section with the grant and the assistance from Sienna. So technically, we could run 2 sections of it, but we're only going to run one.
And that's part of the grant issue.
43 requested.
No, I
it.
know, 43, but how many?
I think we can
30?
have
Can you have 30?
26, 28, right? 26 to 28.
Is that something you would consider running 2 sections, since there's such a large interest?
We
for-
can't for next year, yeah.
The first year in particular, it's the Sienna.
Faculty is gonna-
Working with our faculty to teach how to teach that course, so we're only allowed one section of the grant.
Right.
It's something we can explore in the future, yes.
We'd like to expand it if there's, it looks like for the first year, there's great student interest, so hopefully the following year, we could look to expand it.
But if we were to add a line item, like budget-wise, for an additional .2, we still couldn't do that?
Not
It sounds like
current-
per the grant, the
Yeah.
grant precludes you from doing that.
Right. Because the grant is funding the Sienna faculty to be the one here teaching it.
Right,
and
we-
allowing the credit,
okay.
yeah.
So, and it is 1 credit. Or
It-
how many
state-
credits do they get?
They can elect to apply for Sienna credit. It's a college course, so technically it's 3 credits through Sienna.
And if I can, just students, if you can bear with us, we're almost done, just
Can
for
I
a
just
couple
make
more
one
minutes.
comment, though, before we leave the instructional ads? Are we leaving the instructional ads?
Yeah, well, and it's almost 9, it is after 9 for the students, that's why I think Tom wanted to,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
I can wait.
yeah.
Can we just take a break then?
Yeah,
let's
why
just
don't
let
we
the
take a
Because I
break?
have a couple
Okay.
questions still.
Okay.
so-
Right.
All right.
Our
We'll
side of the
take a
table has
5-minute
a-
break so the PIG students can come up and sign out. We'll have sheets here, and if you need us to sign your sheet, you are more than welcome to stay if you want to continue for the rest of the meeting, but.
I'm sure it's.
Okay, we're back in session?
Okay.
No, it's their ethics.
Exactly.
Okay, I think Joanne, you had some questions.
Yeah, this side of the table wants a turn. Just a comment on the instructional ads on page 34. I was looking back at Jody's presentation the last meeting, and I am very glad to see that, that the elementary staffing and the RTI ads, which were both ads that were talked about in one way or another at just about every board meeting we had over the course of the past year. The principals talked about, we already, talked about what was on their wish list, but, the RTI issue has come up a couple of times when we talked the process committee meeting. We even had high school faculty saying, here's our priority, I think we should add on the RTI in the elementary. So I am really glad to see, what's that, the number 500 and, almost $40,000 of the total, which is 768 about, is going toward those two priorities, which we heard by teachers and the administrators at almost every meeting over the course of the year. So I also trust that when you guys take a look at kind of figuring out whether you need 4.6 or 4.0 or 4.1 or whatever, or whether it's 3 elementary, that you guys do this all day long, hour in, hour out. I'm assuming that you've already matched up the data with the need, and you've figured out the best place to recommend. So I have a lot of faith in kind of that process. I will say, you know, Charmaine's comment about when we look at the enrollment numbers at some of those higher grades in the elementary school, you know, I would be interested if we were going to further add. I don't want to see reductions in those ads right now. I am really comfortable, really happy. I also think it reflects, like I just said, the sentiment of the experts in our classrooms, in our schools. So I like where we landed, but I would be interested to see what that would look like. As long as we're in sort of an adding mood, I would like to examine whether or not maybe there is a way to bring down some of those classroom numbers in the upper grades of elementary. You know, I think there is benefit to that at those younger grades to bring those class sizes down. We definitely have a need to do that. So, but overall, I'm pretty happy with this slide. I like this a lot. So thank you for
thank you.
prioritizing.
I just had a comment on, and I don't really see like a, and maybe I just don't know where it is, but as far as staff development goes, do we add into that? And I guess I'm thinking more on the area of the literacy coach, but also I'd still love to see like the technology coach coming into the elementary schools and helping out. I don't know if, you know, the teachers who have smart boards, if they're used a lot. I know that that's a complaint I've heard, that, you know, people aren't using them. I think would be a great.
Diane, that is one of the areas that we heard from the board the last time we went back and talked as an administrative team. And I actually said, hey, we should consider this. But what happens is trying to turn around something like that without having discussion with all the key constituents that were there was just too short of a time. But one of the things we said is if we were looking at that, say, outside the budget process, that if we had to, we may find that we have room during the next year or between now and next year to maybe fully think that out and look at it as an option. That although it may not be in the budget, we may have the funds to be able to do it alternatively, because we always have what's known as positional breakage throughout the year. Somebody retires or somebody resigns, and the amount of time that it takes us to rehire or put somebody else in that position creates savings for the district. Plus, we have the fund balance if we had to look at it as well. We were probably identifying about $50,000 to $75,000 for that. That I think, even though that's a lot of money for the budget, it's something that we would probably have to have further consideration on for the technology piece.
Right. So you need to get permission from.
When Sal and I talked a little bit more, we've talked about this quite a bit, actually, about the best model to provide professional development. And the tech coach perhaps could work at the elementary level, but then we still have the issue of the secondary level and you know, what type of training do we provide them? Because everyone's going through this transition with Aspens and smart boards and new technologies, and we're shifting into a lot more Google applications. So Sal and I have not really had a chance to sit down and really look that through with the principals and talk about what that might look like. The best PD for that situation, I think, would be to have someone in every building that's available. One of the challenges with that is teachers get worried about being out of the classroom too much. So if it's based on some kind of release time, you know, this time of year, a lot of teachers don't want to be out. So what kind of model would work best? Would it be some kind of a stipend position for, say, 3 or 4 teachers at the secondary levels in each building, maybe 1 or 2 at the elementary, depending on size, and who would be the right people for that? So I think that we're definitely interested in looking at that more. We've had some additional funds for staff development because of the Aspen implementation. If we needed more, or we have a better plan, we certainly will come back to the board with this idea, particularly if we do have remaining funds and we have the ability to do that. It's just in the amount of time, we really haven't had a chance to identify what that could look like with administrators or teachers, because each level would be a little bit different.
When we had a tech coach, wasn't it through?
It was through a sabbatical.
Yes.
Right.
Would we pursue that again? I mean, that seemed to have worked. I remember the presentation that was provided to the
Right.
board on that was.
It worked.
It was very beneficial
Again,
for the district.
right. It was only at the elementary level, so it didn't address the secondary piece. That's why, perhaps a tech coach would work at the elementary, but I'm not sure what model would work best at the secondary level.
Or even, I don't know if we could even hire like a full-time position for that, so somebody isn't taking the.
Right.
It's just, just the hands-on, somebody in there all the time.
Right,
You
helping.
Go to a presentation for an hour and, unless
Or
you
go in
use
your
it
classroom and help you with a lesson using technology.
Yeah, I
Sure, after
second
the
that. I
sabbatical
like
was
that
over,
idea.
everybody still continued to go to this individual who
Yes.
was trying to teach their class, so.
And still do.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
our
we-
staff are craving that type of involvement and professional development, just because of the fact we're making a very large investment, even in our bond, with some of the technologies in the classroom. And I know, just from personal experience, we want to try to get people up to speed as quickly as possible, but we'd really like to devise a better plan to be able to do that at each of the levels.
Matt,
Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment about what Joanne was saying. In an ideal world, obviously, we would love to be able to reduce class sizes across the board, but I think we're right in focusing on the youngest levels, because most of the research shows that's where, to use a terrible phrase, you get your most bang for the buck in terms of educational development. And since we hopefully will be getting rid of the GEA next year, we will hopefully have some funds where we can look at making additional class size reductions. So I think we're on the right track, but I'm not as concerned with trying to do everything this year, as long as we have a plan in place that we can try to address all the needs over a couple of years.
And on that note, I want to be conservative. I know we're getting additional aid, and I just don't want us to go spending crazy, which to me, it seems a little bit, that's the direction we're heading. So I want to rein that in a little bit. But I'm going to disagree with you on the 5th grade level, because I think that's a very imperative year. They're doing advanced math coursework. They're getting ready to go to the middle school. And I think the more attention they get to develop them as good students is very important. So I know the younger area is good, but I think 5th grade is really an important integral year for elementary students.
And just so that you know, I think our numbers, especially at 5th grade, are probably going to be some of our better numbers than we've had in like
Good.
my previous 3 years, because we've been trying to use our guidelines and using that, even though we're not required to use it as a cap, but we've been trying to use that as the grade level cap. And when I first came in, there was about 10 to 15 class sections that were automatically over that cap. And I think right now, going into next year with some of our proposals here, I think we roughly have roughly three buildings, a total of maybe 5 sections that would be at the cap or at that recommended level, or just slightly above. And with 3 of those, we could possibly have the students in different schools where they currently are right now, and it will affect everybody with a much lower number, and
Good to hear.
it wouldn't be seen. So I think administratively, we've taken a good deal of trying to address that as representatively as we can. Unfortunately, we have 5 schools, some have 2 sections only per school, some have 3, some have 4. You can't really balance it unless you basically brought all the schools under one roof and said, okay, kindergarten through 2 is here, or sort of the Princeton plan, and so forth. So we're about community schooling, so unfortunately, the divisor is always the problem, and the boundaries.
I think in the discussion on elementary class size and staffing, again, I would just send you back and come back with the best plan that you feel like, and I do want to appreciate the time and energy and expertise that went into the initial numbers that we've seen, but whether you consider adding to your request to drop some of the numbers in some of the other schools, or consolidating and asking for fewer teachers, as opposed to the 3, because for some of those schools, you can consolidate and bring that number up to other schools' current level.
Yeah.
So again, what is the best, working with the principals, and this concerns grades K to 3. Which are the younger grades. So I'm not saying I don't care which way you go, but I would like you to
Give you our best recommendation.
well, and also
Isn't that
thinking
what this is,
across
though?
schools. Across schools, because if you're asking for 3, and some schools have much lower class sizes in a particular grade, but you can bring them up to the same level as another school by just cutting an existing teacher, then you only have to request 2. Or if you're going to request 3,
You could request 4 to bring
you can
somebody
request
else
4 and bring that class size down and grade 3 at a particular other school. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
I'm not telling you which way to go, but I would just ask you to reflect on the feedback from the board.
And what we would do is look at all the factors, especially at the primary, because one of the factors that we must deal with is only 2 of our 5 buildings house English as a second language, and that is a factor that we are already currently pressing that we have no more room for.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
okay. Other questions on the overall priority list that you have in front?
I just, on the, this is page 40. It was on the garden club and the chef's club, which I think are great ideas. At the, at the middle school, I know the students are very enthusiastic about the garden that is there and actually partake in eating the results, great salads and whatever. My question is, are there other clubs at the middle school that maybe aren't functioning as well? And this would be true for the high school, too. I mean, is everybody functioning to the full point of paying an advisor and having a big group of students? And I just... They're gone? Okay. Okay, and the high school, too, Scott?
We're trying to survive the ones that have been still in existence without funding first, and then I think we'll probably have to explore, potentially in the future, some of those other avenues that were very worthwhile for students to bring them back.
And what I know I had mentioned previously was the sets for the musical production at the middle school. I had the joy of doing that last year, and it was very labor intensive. I hauled a lot of wood from Lowe's, and it really is, I can tell you, a paid position that somebody used to have for many years until budget reductions, and I think it's something you may want to look into.
What was
because it
that again, the set design?
there to reinstate.
For director. That's not, I don't think it was, is it different?
No, it's,
Yeah, there it
even
is.
though it says director, it's, they did the same, that person did that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think that's what you're referring to.
Perfect.
Yeah, so that is in there. We like to make people smile.
Can I get a retroactive?
Others on the priority? So again, this will be up on the website so that you can see it. And then just a real quick, we're going to fly through these because we've already recapped them, but a recap of other key elements. I'd invite Judy up here, but we're talking about that. We've already talked about this 3 times, the capital outlay at the high school pool, $100,000 in the budget to do high school pool phase 3, more interior finishes, additional equipment replacement, and it's eligible for $68,000 in building aid. In addition, reviewing items that will be on the ballot are the BCSD budget adoption, 2 3-year Board of Education seats, a bus purchase proposition, the proposition for the authority to establish a capital reserve fund, In addition, the Bethlehem Public Library's budget and also 2 5-year trustee seats would be on the ballot at this point. And then also, please remember, as we've already talked about, in that proposition is the consideration for bus replacement. We're seeking 8 large buses, 2 small buses for a total cost not to exceed $1,027,000. This must be decided as, please forgive me, we've already decided this, but this was one of those slides we didn't get a chance to, so we're using it over again. It's already been decided, so thank you.
We approved it last meeting.
Yes. And then the creation of capital reserve, this was done at the last meeting. It is a restricted component of general fund balance per Ed Law 3651, Section 1. It's funded with an available budgetary surpluses. Ours is for a maximum of a 10-year life with a maximum amount of funding of up to $10 million. That does not mean we're funding it at all. It just means that the reserve would be able to be authorized for the district to use. Any funds that would be flowing into this capital reserve would be sources of funds used for future capital projects. It would help us lower debt issuance, and it would also help without impacting aid or the tax levy by utilizing funds from the capital reserve. You know, in order to spend this, the board has to give its approval before we can utilize it, but not only does the board have to give its approval, it must also be authorized by the majority of voters at an election time or a proposition time for a bond project. So that's what we're proposing and trying to explain, that there's no cost to the district. This is just establishing a saving fund for the district to be able to utilize if indeed the district has some surpluses, so that we can plan for capital expenditures in a better way for the future. Any questions on that?
Didn't we vote on that already?
You did vote on it. This is just reminding everybody that
okay.
this is on the project in case they
No,
ask.
I thought you said we still had to
Yeah.
vote on it.
And then, of course, future meetings, I would request that we remove the word tentative from April 15th, because we should have final state aid figures at that point, as well as any questions that we have. Plus, we'll take what the board has asked us to look at, and then you could possibly adopt a budget on the 15th, or you could wait until the last possible day, which is April 21st, and that's also a scheduled board meeting. That is on a Tuesday, I believe, just because of the fact that that is the day required by law that we have to comply. So that's a night for the budget would have to be adopted by the board, and we would also have to approve the property tax report card that evening as well, because it must be filed within 24 hours of budget adoption.
Just a question on that. Not that I don't love going through the same budget information each meeting, which I think we've done a good job at going through, you know. But why wouldn't we, I mean, next week, the April 15th, we're going to have the final state aid numbers, so those will be refined, but they're not going to be kind of off the wall different than kind of what we looked at tonight, the assumption is. So why wouldn't we plan on adopting the budget at the 15th meeting?
You could. We wanted to give the board, as well as the community, the maximum amount of time to weigh in on anything that you've been discussing tonight or over the past 4 board meetings that we've had.
Right.
As well as we would have to take a break, because we'd have to calculate if there's any changes, because the board hasn't, I mean, we can come back and give you our recommendation.
The slider that we've used in the past.
Yeah, the slider.
Well, right now, we hopefully don't have to do much of the slider. What we would probably do is come back and give you our plan for that 375. If you're okay tonight with the 0.45 as the maximum allowable tax levy, at least from what we know from the state aid. If you're okay with that, we would set that number. Then we would try to balance out the budget with everything that we have, unless you wish us to remove something from any proposed addition or add anything. That would be the remaining factors that would be open for discussion.
So if we were to say 0% and get rid of, no increase, the 0.45 represents what?
$287,000.
$287,000 in cuts or fund balance that we would.
Or
have
fund
to use.
balance.
Or fund balance.
I mean, right now, you could potentially say go out with 0. I would not recommend that, just because that has a lasting effect on our budget plan going forward. Although it's certainly something that the board can consider. It would mean instead of 375 that we're short right now, we would be 650, about 650 to 660,000. We could close it by not making a cut and just use fund balance for that. I just think it's better that we get a financial plan. We know our levy, which is, I would have a hard time living in this community and think that 0.45 would not be supported at 50% or more approval rating when every budget that I've presented has been above 63% and on average 2.9% levy or higher, and we've had to do eviscerating cuts. In this situation, we're hopefully restoring some of the health and having one of the lowest potential levies that I can present, and we're minimizing $1.4 million potentially in fund balance. In other words, we're making ourselves whole.
There was also in the clips today an article about the number of school districts that are piercing the cap this year, which, I mean, we wouldn't even, 0.45 is
No, we did
probably.
that the first year.
No, I understand.
I'm hoping I never have to do it again.
Yeah, and we certainly never want to get there again, but I would imagine 0.45 has got to be like the lowest in the state.
It's low.
I don't feel that everything in the budget's necessary, and I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I would want to
And
have
that's your
discussion on that, and I don't necessarily want to agree to a 0.45 just because we can, and,
And it sounds like you did hear quite a bit of feedback from the board to say, recheck this and please come back reconsidering or reflecting with a final number. And I also realize you're looking down the road and not just at this year's budget in terms of when you ask for a particular tax levy. The other thing I'll say about the meetings is I anticipate having to miss the April 15th meeting because of a medical issue. And the board can always adopt a budget without my vote. Of course, I would always love to have my vote registered, so please don't feel like you have to hold the vote up. But I will make that meeting if I can. I don't anticipate being able to, so I will be here on the 21st.
In order to ask for some guidance on the board, because you leave it to us, we're going to go at 0.45 as our recommendation and try to minimize or eliminate fund balance if possible and strengthen the district with what we've proposed. Is 0.45 something that the board is absolutely against?
Just a comment before that. I'm not
Okay.
against the .45. However, if I can just get more information on the transportation, the
Telemetry?
GP, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
and there was a priority list, I think we asked for athletics with safety items first, and then a priority list of things that they needed, I believe.
Well, we didn't do it by, in the priority list. It went by, I believe, if I'm just calling from memory, I think it went by, our highest priority would be those items that were field or game site necessary to practice, which I think was like the hockey, and I'm looking at Len, the hockey, the golf, the bowling, and program reinstatement was in there. Things that we should be paying for if we offer the program.
Right.
And then the
There
second
was like
level.
defibrillators and,
Well, and then the second level was, I'm just drawing a blank.
For track.
Yeah, new position, was it new position? It wasn't, it was reinstatement of positions for the track, reinstatement of, I think, gymnastics, that's where that was. And
yeah, a designation of
equipment.
safety items would be,
Right.
I would like to have. Just which ones in the budget. I know we talked about them during public session, but there was
What do
a
you, I'm drawing a blank on safety items because I don't believe that was.
defibrillator, he's running across, he wants a golf cart so he can drive
No,
across.
the golf cart is part of that second level, the equipment piece.
Mm-hmm.
Because we do currently have them, we need to replace them because they're being worn out. But that defibrillator, that cart would be set up for the emergency piece.
Right,
think
I
is
just
what he
had
said.
asked for those items that were safety-related, such as the assistant coaches or the cart, if we could get a designation on which ones go to safety for the students.
So you gave us, though, you gave us kind of the priority list. That's what this document
Ev-
was.
Everything in that document was in
Okay.
the list. I
Okay.
also gave you a shortened annotation so that you can
Right.
see it front and back.
Right,
That
yep.
list matches this list.
Got
The
it.
only difference in yours is the items on the ads that are in blue.
Right.
The only reason they were in blue is because we wanted to identify the ones we needed to address
Okay.
this evening.
Right.
I can send that tomorrow. Everything will be in green. It will still be in the same order. It was just, that was our visual cue to make sure that we double-checked and had all the right numbers matching.
Okay, good, thank you.
I think back to Joanne's question, do we think we would be willing to make a decision on the 15th, or do we want to keep the 21st meeting? And I ask that because I think we need to let the board know when we're going to adopt, or the public know when we're going
Well,
to
the
plan on
21st is
adopting.
also a regular board meeting, too. Right. Isn't it?
No,
Yes.
the 15th would be the normal board meeting.
Oh, is
No.
The
it?
21st is just a date we had to have it by.
The 21st was always scheduled as the normal board meeting.
Oh,
The
okay.
15th is the
Was the added
tentative.
Okay.
Right.
If we could have had this information well before, we could have brought you a recommendation, had the discussion. If the board can tell us fund balance and levy, we can take it from there. Or fund balance, levy, and things you don't want in the budget, or things you do want in the budget, we take it from there. We need those three pieces.
Well, answering the question about the tax levy, I mean, I'm personally comfortable with the .45. I think, you know, that's astonishingly great to be able to say that we're, you know, keeping it at that level and, you know, so I'm perfectly fine with that.
I
Just
would
using
like
it-
to see if we could get to zero, but,
Might-
you know,
too.
see what our options are.
This came up a bunch of years ago. I think the best way to present this for the board is to come with a couple of plans. This is what it would look like at .4, whatever it is, and then this is what it'll look like at zero.
Well, does it have to be either .45
Oh,
or
no.
zero?
No, and then in
No,
between.
no, I-
And then the board,
yeah.
that's the board discussion
Right.
is what,
Yeah.
you know, up and down and up and down.
Right,
and-
well, then what's out?
Yeah, so it sounds like the highest you're proposing is .4 whatever, and the lowest would be
Well,
lowest
it could be something
be a
less than zero.
reduction.
It could be a
Yeah.
reduction if we
Okay.
said nothing to all these add-ons, too.
Right,
I mean,
right.
that's
So-
the option that the board has.
As I recall,
Right.
several years ago, we had a spreadsheet
Right.
where.
When they
you know,
added or deleted it,
And
gave
we
us.
could change what
Yeah.
Yeah.
the levy was, and it would automatically
So it
reconfigure
would-
all the numbers,
yeah.
and so we would know where we're
Right.
at varying levels.
They did the
That
same
would
thing
probably
for
be
cuts.
helpful.
Level one,
Right,
level
because we
two, level
might want to
three.
do what supermarkets do
Right.
and do .39 or
Yeah.
29. or-
But also, I mean, if we're looking at that, I mean, are we going, is this like list cut in stone as far as prioritizing? Because I would still like to see a couple of those things moved up.
No, I think that's up to the board to make the
I would suggest
decision.
that we take a couple weeks to really
Yes.
review this list,
Yeah.
since we really haven't had a lot of time
Mm-hmm.
to review the priority list, and then we can have a discussion on the
15th,
15th.
right, and then vote on the 21st.
If we're all in agreement on the 15th, I don't see any reason why we couldn't approve a budget, but we should keep the 21st in our back pocket if we need
Ag-
it.
Well,
Again,
21st is a
I
board
would want to
meeting,
say,
so, yeah.
the
Right.
public, though, I'd like to give a heads up to the public to be able
Well,
to
it
be.
could be on either date.
Okay, then
mean,
then
just
we'll
say-
put that out there, potentially,
if we can
may
agree-
potentially adopt the budget
I
tonight,
would,
if not,
I
it would
would
be the
have to
21st.
remind the board that if we say went into the 15th and you're okay and say, hey, we're ready to approve, we may have to take a little hiatus.
Yeah, that's fine.
Uh,
We've done that in the
We'll try to
past.
have it
We've done that
prepped
in the
for
past.
either thing.
We've done
but
that before.
You know,
Yep.
we just want to make sure our numbers are right before we put a final resolution to anything.
Yeah, I would go with just the wording here. It says, possible budget adoption.
Well, that's been
15th.
on all of our calendars.
Yeah, and then
Right.
21st, well, you know, it has to be, so.
All right.
Okay, any other questions? We'll stick with our plan right now at .45, and we'll try to give you a couple options.
Okay.
Okay? Anything else you need, Judy? or- Okay, that's
Yeah,
it.
we have,
We just,
Oh, no, can we get out of this?
we just do it all in one.
All in one block? I forgot, we have a
We'll
lot more
try.
to
We-
do.
we still
We're
have-
only on item 2.
we still have a meeting, guys.
Hey, Diane, put your mic down.
I'd like to thank Tom and the whole administrative team for putting this all together in such a short notice. As we mentioned earlier, the aid runs came out this morning or this afternoon at 1:30. So they had a lot of work to do, and we appreciate the effort they put into it and coming to us with a good, solid proposal.
Yes. Let's see how fast you can do this, Matt.
Yeah, our audience
Okay.
is leaving. The one, if anybody wanted to say something.
Okay. Item number 7, recognition of visitors. This time is set aside for visitors to address the Board of Education on any agenda item. Anyone? Nope. Okay. Getting a signal. Hurry up. From the audience, I'm getting that. Item number 8, finance. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following finance action items A through B.
So moved.
That's a first and a second. Any discussion?
Question. The
Yes.
Unified Sports Program, I know there's also a coach listed later on. You had talked about that program possibly starting at the end of, after break, correct?
I believe it starts right when we come back from break.
And what sports?
Basketball. Currently it's only basketball. Next year they're looking to add bowling.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That item carries. Support personnel. Do we have an amendment to 10? Is that the one where
That's
we have an
professional.
amendment?
With professional personnel, if you could
Oh,
look
I'm
at
sorry,
item
professional personnel.
J,
Okay.
item J, where it said salary to be determined, that salary should be now $1,082, year 1, step 1.
It's on page 3, it's on page.
Also,
That's
how
it.
about in K? Is
And
that-
K, now that the MOU has been approved, the salary would be considered at $361, year 1, step 1. And that would be the addendum that needed to be
Okay.
updated.
Okay, so,
And
item
we'll
number,
move that with that information.
item number 9, professional personnel, is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following instructional staff action items A through K,
So
with
moved.
so noted amendments.
So moved.
That's what I said.
First and second?
And-
Oh, no, that's a first. Anyone second it?
Second.
Well, I
Second,
had
okay.
firsted it before.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
I have a
You
question
have
on
it.
correspondence.
I hadn't read it yet.
Whatever.
That's a first and second. Any discussion?
Wait. I think we're going a little fast and we may be getting a little confused. What did you say?
No, you're fine.
You're
You're just
good?
fine.
You're
I
good.
just have a question when you get to the next item, if I have a question on it before you vote on it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going
Professional staff right now?
No.
Oh,
Keep going.
okay, yep. Any discussion? No. Any, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Item number 9 carries. Item number 10, support personnel. Do I have an amendment on that one, Phil?
There is a walkthrough amendment that this would be letter D.
Okay. So it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following support staff action items A through D.
What is
Was it-
D?
D
D
is,
is the resignation for personal reasons of Michael Bronson, 12-month custodial worker at the high school, close of business on March 26, 2005, years of service, 8 years.
So moved?
that's a first and second. Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? That item carries. Action item number 11, correspondence for action. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following correspondence action items A through E.
I have a question.
So moved.
This is
First and second.
And now questions.
Any
Okay.
discussion?
Yes, on item number E, the Lab School proposed trip to Chinjacook has been moved to Monday through Wednesday. I think that's an issue for the students. They come back, they're tired. It's always been Wednesday through Friday. I just think that change would be difficult for them if they're gone for 3 days and they've missed instruction in classes outside of lab school. Now you have language outside of lab school, some of their other electives. I just wanted to see what the mindset was on changing it from Monday through Wednesday versus Wednesday through Friday. So they would have the weekend to have the time to recover from the activities. They're up late.
But didn't the lab school propose it, though?
Yeah, the
Um,
lab
I-
school approves. I mean,
I have no idea. I didn't get any information on this, but it just seems odd to me. I don't know if it came out of the committee, and we haven't been proposed with committee recommendations,
It hasn't come
so.
out of the
My
committee.
guess it may have something to do with money. It might be.
It might be one
No,
of their
I would like to get more information, because that just seems.
Mr. Landry, because this would come through, I think, your approval process down to the board for an overnight? Was that the request
was-
that was made to you?
Who presented it to you?
Did Mr. Mitchell?
Was it Mr. Mitchell? Did he recommend I'm just wondering who recommended it. It just seems like an odd change. I've had a student in lab school, so.
And the only other thing that I can say is much like with our other field trips, if, like both of the overseas trips are returning that Sunday before, the expectation is that students are returned on Monday, and the teachers as well. So that's not anything out of the ordinary about them coming
No.
back.
But do you-
Can I get more
Let me
information on
ask,
that?
from the best of your knowledge, this is the request?
The lab
I'm
school
just very
presented it to you.
surprised at the date change, so I just wanted to see where where the change came from, if I
But
could.
the form that was on the website was from the lab school.
Yeah.
Was two teachers,
Did
I
it
believe.
come out of a committee decision, or?
No.
They signed off on it. It's just, Mike Mitchell has signed
Yeah,
off.
they submitted it to the administration.
I mean, we can approve it if they change it, or.
Yeah, they can always
fine.
modify and
Yeah.
change it, but to the best of my knowledge.
Maybe the only time it was available,
Yeah,
when they
yeah.
looked to book it.
Since this was an action item that just came up for discussion, I don't know if there's any members in the audience who would like to discuss it. I don't know if that would be allowable or not.
But we allowed that at the beginning if anyone had any questions about the things. But we can always open it up back at the end, but.
I just had a question on D,
Yeah, I
because
have
you're
a
talking
question.
about Spain, trip to Spain, and then it says the proposed Germany trip. Just a little
Yeah.
faux pas there, to change that to Spain. An E.
Wait,
It says the proposed trip to Spain.
yeah.
And then it says, then it says the board approved
Okay.
the Germany trip.
Sorry,
So
thank you. for
it's just a
catching it.
typo,
Germany.
but
And I just wanted to clarify that these are the dates, because on the portal, the dates were like early March, or late March, beginning of April.
these
on
are
one of
April
the
breaks.
trips.
They're all on.
I know,
These are
but
all-
I want to make sure they are going to be the dates listed here.
Yeah.
Because
This
the
is
form
the
didn't
calendar.
coincide with,
April 23rd to May 1st
Right.
is the break?
okay.
Yes.
Yeah, the
Late.
break's really late next year.
Yeah.
We
Because
always
on,
looked at the
sorry,
calendar.
on the, I remember when it initially was submitted,
They thought that's when the break was.
they thought the April break was going to be
early.
earlier, but these
Good
are the
Friday,
actual
right, Okay,
dates.
correct. I just wanted to clarify
Yeah,
that.
when we did the calendar, the April break is
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
late.
So these are the correct ones.
I do have a question on the special ed recommendations. Could we just, I noticed that we get them listed, we don't know the students' names, and no other identification. But I noticed that sometimes there were consultant teachers that varied the number of consultant teacher hours or visits per week. I think I mentioned an email to you, Mrs. Johnston. For example, sometimes the same student would get 5 consultant service teacher blocks for, let's say, math, and only 3 for another subject. So could you just give us some information on how you handle, I mean, does it depend on the subject and how much support the student needs per subject, or why do they vary?
The
with consultant-
program model for the DCT program at the secondary level, and the students you were looking at, or those cases were up here at the high school, gives ELA and math 5 times a week, and then they do a split between social studies and science, based on the recommendations from the teachers on how much support's needed.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That item carries. Okay. Recognition of visitors. At this time, anyone who would like to address the board on a non-agenda item?
You said you might open it up if you wanted to do that.
The rest of the board? I guess open it up for an agenda item? Okay. If you could want to make a comment to the board, yeah.
get the
Okay.
microphone's over here.
Jonathan Fishbein. I may be speaking out of turn because I really don't know the history of the change in the lab school trip date. But if there was an error in the date, I'm assuming, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the board it could come to the board again and you could correct it if it's supposed to be Wednesday through Friday. Because my concern is the teachers come back exhausted, the kids come back exhausted, and I'm waiting for my daughter to say to me, Dad, can I stay home? And I'm going to have to say no. And that's not going to be a good scene. So, thank you.
And we've got to believe that the lab school administration has presented the board with the information that, the trip they requested.
I'm assuming it's probably correct, and if this is what they've requested, I don't want to get involved in that because they know best. My concern was it has always been Wednesday through Friday. There were reasons for it. And I'm just wondering if maybe either it's the only time available, and that would be legitimate reason to change it, or if in fact there was a mistake. And if there was, I'm assuming the board can
And I
correct it.
think I can only say, Jonathan, this is the date that was presented to Brittany on the form, so we would just, I mean, personally,
Thank you.
I don't care whether it's Wednesday through Thursday, Monday through Friday, or, well, I do care if it's Monday through Friday, but, you know, so that we reflect what the teachers are requesting for it. But always, if there's an error, this is sort of a new, old process for the board. We weren't doing overnight trips. We're starting to do that so that people can actually, like I think I was talking to Mr. Mitchell the other day about the Boston trip. Now that it's approved, he can start fundraising on it, and he's a year out, which helps him. He kind of emphasized to me that he liked that. We've got to get everybody back into the swing of things of doing that well before, like, at least 3 or 4 months before, so it's not like last week we're getting told that, oh, we want to go on an overnight 2 weeks from now, and we place it in front of the board, but yet they've already done fundraising. So we're trying to do a better procedure, which was, I believe, Ms. Lenhart said, was something the district was familiar with doing long ago. Okay? Thank you.
Yes, I believe you had a comment, miss? If you could just state your name, we're being taped. Yep.
My name is Nell Ball. And I just want to thank you for listening to my remarks. I know it's been a long night. But as I said, my name's Nell Ball, and my husband and I are here today as the parents of Jimmy, a 6th grader, Maggie, a 10th grader, and Dan, a recent graduate of Bethlehem Central School District. We want to ensure that our 2 children, and listening to the budget tonight, it sounds like it, our 2 children who are still in BC schools continue to have the same opportunities that our oldest child had. However, the recent trends in education are cause for serious alarm. We believe we are so fortunate to have our children attend Bethlehem schools, and we appreciate the many academic and extracurricular opportunities that are afforded them. Our oldest son went to Bethlehem schools from kindergarten through 12th grade and is currently a freshman at Ithaca College. We believe the top-notch instruction and support he received from Bethlehem teachers and staff fully prepared him for the academic foundation and skills he needs to take in this next step in his life. We have witnessed the rapid change and vilification of public education over the past 5 years due to the gap elimination adjustment, a flawed New York State Department of Education implementation of Common Core standards, local control being taken away from school districts, unfunded state mandates, and an over-reliance on standardized testings to evaluate our students, teachers, and school districts. We have seen resources cut, class sizes go up, and testing increase. Through letters, phone calls, and emails, we have expressed our concern over these issues with Governor Cuomo, Chancellor Tisch, state assembly members, and state senators. As we have said, recent trends in New York State public education have given us serious cause for alarm. We know that the various leaders of Bethlehem schools are also alarmed and have been fighting back against these trends. Thank you. We appreciate the district's advocacy efforts towards BC parents and community members, stirring them to join the fight. We are proud that our board president, Matt Downey, Superintendent Douglas, Union President Dave Rounds, and Principal Union President Mike Klugman joined the Alliance to Save Public Education and urged our legislators to reject the governor's education agenda. Despite all our efforts, we as parents have decided to take additional course of action. On Sunday, we sent an email to Mr. Klugman at Bethlehem Middle School informing him that we are refusing the New York State ELA and math tests for our son, who is a 6th grader there. This decision was made after much research, deliberation, and discussion, and this is the first time we have done so. We are here tonight to explain our opposition to these tests to you, the Board of Education, and to the parents of Bethlehem students. We are not against formal and informal assessments, some of which come in the form of a test. We are opposed to these tests, the New York State Common Core ELA and math tests. We know that effective assessments provide teachers immediate feedback to inform their instruction and to move students forward in their learning. And we know that they help schools and school districts develop programs to support all of their learners. We are opposed to the New York State 3 through 8 ELA and math tests because they provide little and no timely feedback to parents, teachers, and administrators. Students will have already moved on to the next grade level by the time state scores are released. The feedback is in the form of a number that gives parents no information about their child's needs or strengths. They are not appropriate for our most struggling students, our English language learners, and special ed populations. And the results from these tests, which are just a snapshot of our child's learning, are being used as high-stakes evaluations of teachers, administrators, and school districts. We are opposed to the instructional time lost to these tests for several reasons. For 5 days spent on ELA and math testing, not to mention countless days spent on test prep leading up to tests. And once the tests are over, teachers are pulled from classrooms to score these tests, leading to further loss of instructional time. We are opposed to the fact that Governor Andrew Cuomo, the legislature, and the New York State Department of Education are using our children as pawns in their game to vilify teachers, administrators, and school districts for their own political gains and agendas. We are opposed to the millions of dollars that New York State paid and continues to pay Pearson, a for-profit company, to develop tests that are developmentally inappropriate for students being tested. This money could have and should have been used to keep teachers, social workers, school psychologists, teaching assistants, and other support staff in our schools to support our children. We are opposed to the disruption, distraction, and anxiety that these tests have caused not only our Bethlehem students, but all the public districts throughout New York State. We encourage the Bethlehem community to become fully informed about the current state of education reform in New York State and how it will negatively impact our children in schools. We are trying to teach our 6th grader, our 10th grader, and our freshmen in college that when something is inherently wrong with the system, you must stand up and take action. In the end, we believe this civics lesson is far greater than any lesson our children will gain from state tests. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else like to address the board? Okay.
Hey, I'd just like to applaud her comments and her courage for coming forward, so.
Yeah, great comments.
Okay, future meetings, as previously stated, Wednesday, April 15th, 6 p.m. executive session, 7 p.m. regular session here at the high school. And then if need be, if we don't adopt the budget that night, we will have a meeting on Tuesday, April 21st, which is the last day we can adopt it. Again, 6 p.m. executive session, 7 p.m. regular board meeting here at the high school. And then Tuesday, May 5th is Meet the Candidates Night here at the high school, starting at 6:30 p.m. And then Wednesday, May 6th, another board meeting with executive session at 7 p.m. is the regular board meeting. And also, as previously mentioned, there are 2 seats up for election. You can obtain a petition with Brittany. When do the petitions need to be submitted by? April 20th, and election is the 23rd? I know, when is it? What's, May 19th, okay. So, well, it's not here in front of me, so I don't have it. The cheat sheet was lost, so.
You have to have petitions in the month before.
Yeah, okay, so the petitions have to be in a month before, okay? We do need to go back into executive session to discuss tenure and also another personnel matter.
Before we make that motion.
Okay.
I didn't hear what he said.
The normal dates were taken. Monday through Thursday,
Okay.
Wednesday was the best dates that they could take. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Landry, for following up on that. Okay. As I was saying, we do need to go back into executive session to discuss tenure and personnel matter. We do not expect to take any vote on the issue, so we will just come back out and adjourn the meeting at that point. Do I have a motion to go into executive session? First and second, all in favor? Aye. Okay. We are in executive session.